The mother who didn't know. Elena stood outside the bathroom door with her phone shaking in her hand. Jean-Luc's account was gone. The message thread was still there, but his profile photo had vanished, replaced by a blank gray circle. The last thing he had sent her, my love, trust me, sat above a string of messages from her that would never be answered. On the banking app, the savings balance glowed up at her in flat white numbers. 4320. 20 minutes earlier, she had sent 1,000 through Western Union. Now a sound came up her throat so fast and so ugly, she had to slap her palm over her mouth to keep it from carrying through the house. The bathroom light hurt her eyes. The floor felt cold even through her sneakers. In the next room, her mother's television droned on in Spanish, bright and ordinary and unbearable. Elena was 29, bartender in Phoenix, and until this moment, she had not believed she could be this stupid. In the bathroom mirror of the rented house she shared with her mother, the truth had finally become plain. Jean-Luc was not real, or not real in any way that mattered, and the $1,000 meant for Rose's knee surgery was gone. In 12 days, her mother would need that money. Elena had no idea how she was going to put it back. 3 days earlier, she had still believed he loved her. The bar was down to its last sad hour. The Friday crowd had thinned out into a few stubborn men nursing melted ice, and one woman in office clothes staring at her phone with the slack face of somebody avoiding home. The neon beer signs buzzed in the window. The floor behind the bar was sticky no matter how many times Elena mopped it. Lime peels, wet napkins, the sharp, sugary smell of spilled mixers. Everything clung to everything else. Manny was counting the register. He did it slowly, tongue pressed to the corner of his mouth, like the cash drawer had offended him personally. Elena wiped down the counter, checked the game on the silent TV overhead, checked the clock, checked her phone when it buzzed in her back pocket. Her stomach tightened before she even pulled it out. Jean-Luc. Not a text this time, an email. She opened it with one hand still resting on the bar rag. My beautiful Elena, I wanted to wait and tell you this in person, but I'm too excited. I've already sent your gift. She stared at the sentence. For a second, the bar around her went thin and unreal. The hum of the refrigerators, Manny clearing his throat, the low scrape of a stool across the floor. Her pulse moved once, hard. She kept reading. Jean-Luc wrote that he had wanted to surprise her. He said he was tired of words, tired of screens, tired of asking her to trust what she could not yet touch. He had sent her something substantial, something that would prove he was serious about her. A real gift, not flowers, not perfume, not something small and silly. He had laughed at the idea in the message. He wanted her to understand that when he loved someone, he did not do things halfway. Below that, he listed pieces of it in the careless, confident tone of someone who had never had to think much about money. A Cartier watch, jewelry, cash, a few designer items he had picked out because he wanted her to have beautiful things before he ever stepped foot in Arizona. Documents, too, he said. Important papers tied to investments and property, though that part sounded vague enough that even later, Elena would not be able to say exactly what she had imagined. At the end, he told her the parcel had been declared at $480,000. Elena read that number twice. Not because she believed every detail of it, not exactly. The amount itself felt insane. The kind of number that belonged to athletes and lawsuits and people whose kitchens looked like magazines. But Jean-Luc was always posting photographs that made insane things feel merely expensive. He had spent 3 months teaching her what kind of man he was supposed to be. On Instagram, he was all polished shoes, airport lounges, the soft leather interior of luxury cars, glasses of wine against city lights, sleeves rolled up over a watch face that flashed silver and blue in the sun. There were hotel balconies, rooftop dinners, tailored jackets, one photograph of him leaning against a black car in Monaco, or Nice, or somewhere that might as well have been another planet to Elena, with one hand in his pocket and that same half-smile he used in his videos when he lowered his voice and asked if she had eaten. He was handsome in a way that made her feel embarrassed, even alone in her room. Not boyishly cute. Not the sort of handsome that invited jokes. He looked expensive. Finished. The kind of man people glanced at twice. The kind of man whose attention altered the room around it. It wasn't only that he was kind, it was that kindness sounded different coming from a man who looked like that. A rich man's tenderness could feel like rescue if you were not careful. Elena. She looked up. Manny was watching her with narrowed eyes. You hearing me? What? I said you can clock out after you finish the taps. Right, sorry. That French guy? Manny asked, not even trying to hide the grin. She locked the phone and slid it into her apron. Mind your own business. That's a yes. She shook her head, but the smile still pulled at her mouth. For the last 3 months, Jean-Luc had lived in the small, private spaces of her day. Not the big ones, not the public ones. He lived in the car after work with the engine off and the air still warm from the Phoenix sun. In the half hour before sleep when the house went quiet except for Rosa's television. In those slack afternoons between errands and shifts when Sophia was at the hospital and Rosa was sewing by the front window, and Elena felt herself dissolving into the version of her life everybody already expected. He had found her through a comment on one of his posts, or rather, he claimed he had. He said he liked the way she wrote. She had made a joke under a photograph of him standing in front of a cafe in Paris. Something about coffee, that expensive, better changing your life. He had replied, then messaged, then kept messaging. At first she had assumed he was bored, maybe a flirt, maybe some strange man collecting women in different time zones. But he had stayed. And because he stayed, she had started answering him in the soft, private voice she never used with men in Phoenix. He remembered things. That she hated papaya, that her left shoulder hurt after long shifts from carrying trays wrong, that she called her mother Mom in English, but Mama only when one of them was upset, that she had a small scar at her eyebrow from falling off a bike at 9, that she hated when people called her Lena. Once, when she told him she was sitting in her car because she did not feel like going inside yet, he had asked, "Do you always wait before going back to the life people think belongs to you?" It was such an absurdly intimate question that she nearly closed the app. Instead, she answered it. That was the beginning. By the second month, he was sending short voice notes from airports and hotel rooms. By the third, videos. His face tired but smiling, shirt open at the throat, lamplight behind him, French accent rougher when he was sleepy. In one of them, he switched into Spanish for a sentence or two. Bad Spanish, but charmingly bad. And Elena laughed so hard she had to bury her face in the pillow so Rosa would not ask what was funny. He asked about her mother's knee, about Sophia, about work. He never pushed too hard when she dodged. He made her loneliness feel not pathetic, but visible, chosen. The dangerous thing was that he never seemed needy until exactly the moment he did. She finished the taps, signed out, and drove home with the email open in her head like a second road. The neighborhood was mostly dark by then. One porch light here, another there. Dirt yards, faded toys. Chain link fences patched and repatched. The house she shared with Rosa sat low and square under a tired roofline, its small living room window glowing blue with television light. Inside, Rosa was still awake. She sat on the old sofa with her left leg stretched out on a footstool, the bulky brace around her knee visible beneath her house dress. A folded blanket lay beside her. At the far end of the room, under the window, her sewing machine sat on a card table with a half-finished blouse draped over it, pale fabric pinned at one shoulder. Even now, with surgery so close, she was taking in work. Hems, alterations, last-minute church dresses. Little jobs paid in cash and gratitude, and the promise of more little jobs. "You're late," Rosa said without looking away from the television. "It's 1:30. That is late." Her English always flattened when she was tired. Elena bent and kissed the top of her mother's head. Rosa smelled like ivory soap, starch, and the menthol rub she used on the bad knee. "There's soup on the stove," Rosa said. "I'm not hungry." "You'll wake up sick." Elena dropped her purse onto the dining chair and pulled off her hoop earrings. "I won't." Rosa muted the television then and looked up at her. "You look happy," she said. Elena laughed. "Happy? Like somebody said something nice to you." There was no accusation in Rosa's voice. That was the problem. If Rosa had sounded mocking, Elena could have defended herself. But there was only that steady, tired watchfulness that made Elena feel 12 years old and transparent. "Maybe somebody did," she said. "On your phone?" "It's not weird, Mom." "I didn't say weird. You thought it." A tiny smile touched Rosa's mouth, then disappeared. "I thought you should eat." That was how it always went between them. Rosa almost never said the cruel version of what she was thinking. She did not need to. The gentler version still landed. In her room, Elena changed into an old t-shirt and sat cross-legged on the bed beneath the whining AC vent. The room was small: dresser, bed, laundry basket, cheap lamp, a print of desert wildflowers she had bought at Target and never really liked. She opened the email again, then his Instagram, then the last video he had sent her. He was in a hotel room, jacket off, tie loosened. "Look at me," he had said softly, laughing when she replied that she was looking at him. "No, really, I want you to understand something. You've had a hard life for too long. I can see it in how you minimize everything. You should let someone take care of you once in your life." At the time, she had rolled her eyes and told him he sounded ridiculous. But she had replayed the video 4 times after that. Her phone buzzed. A message from him. Are you awake, my love? She called him at once, keeping her voice low so Rosa wouldn't hear through the wall. Elena, he said, and his relief sounded immediate, warm, unforced. I was hoping. You sent me a gift worth $480,000? A soft laugh. When you say it like that, I sound crazy. You are crazy? Maybe. What did you send? You want the full surprise ruined? Yes. He lowered his voice in the way he did when he wanted her to lean closer even though she was alone. Jewelry, some cash, things I bought for you, things I want you to have, and papers. What papers? For later, for when I arrive. I've told you, Elena, I don't think small when I know what I want. She sat very still in the bed. Why would you do that? Because I love you. The words should have scared her. They did, a little, but they also rushed through her like heat. It's too much, she said. It is only too much if I don't mean it. I mean it. Silence sat between them for a second. In the living room, the TV audience laughed at something, then quieted. Jean-Luc exhaled. There is one stupid complication. Her hand tightened around the phone. What complication? The parcel was flagged because of the declared value, customs, airport release, bureaucratic nonsense. His voice sharpened with annoyance, then softened again. I didn't want to bring you that part. I wanted to surprise you when it was already in your hands. What part? There is a release fee. She did not answer. Elena? How much? 1,000. She stood up from the bed and started pacing. That's not a release fee, that's rent. I know. Why can't you pay it? I'm in Nigeria right now for a consulting problem. My accounts are being stupid about the transfer, and the parcel is in your name. He sounded embarrassed now, almost angry with himself. Believe me, if there were another way, I would not ask this of you. The word Nigeria caught against something in her mind. Not fully, just enough to slow her. Nigeria? I told you about the project. No, she thought. You said Africa once. Or maybe Lagos. Or maybe she had filled in the rest because she liked how international his life sounded. How far it reached beyond her bar shifts and utility bills and the hot, still streets of West Phoenix. What if I can't? She asked. He went quiet long enough for the silence itself to become persuasive. Then he said quietly, then I will understand that I have asked too much too soon. It was a good line. Not because it was poetic, because it put the choice back in her hands while making refusal feel like the smaller version of herself. He kept going before she could think too hard. It's for you, Elena. I sent it because I'm serious. I wanted you to have something real from me before I came. I'm tired of you treating this like a dream. I'm not. Aren't you? He asked gently. You still talk like I'm maybe not coming. She looked down at the worn carpet, at the hem of the blanket hanging crooked off the bed. You just what? She could not say it aloud. I just don't understand why a man who looks like you would pick me. So she said nothing. His voice softened further. My love, all that stands between you and what I sent is a $1,000 clearance fee. Then, it is yours. The watches, the jewelry, the cash, everything. You can put back whatever you borrow. More than that, you know this. That was the sentence that did it. Not I need your help. Not trust me. Not even I love you. It was you can put back whatever you borrow. $1,000 was a lot, but not next to $480,000. Not next to a box already addressed to her. Not next to the thought that this was temporary. A bridge, a formality. She would take the money from the surgery account, pay the fee, receive the package, replace the money before Rosa ever noticed it had moved. She might even finally breathe a little. She might even stop feeling like the weakest link in a family that had learned to survive by never mistaking hope for a plan. I need to think, she said. Think, he replied. But not too long. They said if it isn't processed tomorrow, it may be held and penalized. I don't want that for you. For you. He always knew how to dress his urgency as care. The next day, Elena worked a double shift with that conversation lodged behind her eyes. Every beer she poured, every card she ran, every joke she smiled at without hearing seemed to happen a few feet away from where she actually was. At 3 p.m. during break, she sat alone in the alley behind the bar with a paper cup of melting soda and opened the surgery account on her phone. The balance sat there in steady black numbers. Enough for the procedure, enough for the pre-op expenses Rosa kept worrying over. Enough to make Elena close the app, open it again, and stare harder. The account was joint, but practically speaking, it was hers to access. Rosa hated online banking and did not trust herself with all those screens. Elena held the card. Elena knew the password. Most of the money was Rosa's, built little by little from years at the sewing machine, from hem jobs and zipper repairs and alterations done late at night with a heating pad wrapped around one knee. Some was Elena's tip money, Added on weeks she felt responsible enough to be the daughter she wished she were. Some had come from Sophia, who sent money the way some people sent apologies. Direct deposit, no speech attached. Elena called Jean-Luc again. He answered on the first ring. "Tell me exactly what happens after I pay." He did not sound triumphant. He sounded tired, relieved, matter of fact. The voice of a man managing logistics, not seduction. That helped him. "You send the clearance fee," he said. "They process the parcel release. You receive the documentation, then delivery, that's all." "You swear?" "Yes." "And the package is in my name?" "Yes." "With everything in it?" "Yes." "How much cash?" He laughed softly. "Now you sound like a suspicious woman." "Good. Stay suspicious. There is cash. There are valuables. There are things I chose for you. Does every piece matter?" No, she thought. The point was not the inventory. The point was the scale of it. The point was that a man like him had supposedly decided she was worth spoiling. She said, "I just need this to be real." "It is real," he said. He sounded hurt by the question. Another good move. At 6:30, when her shift ended, she drove not home but to the grocery store, with the Western Union counter tucked between customer service and the lottery machine. The store was too cold inside. She could feel sweat cooling under her bra from the heat outside. A woman in scrubs argued about a money order at the next window. Somewhere in produce, a child was screaming with the flat stubbornness of exhaustion. Elena filled out the transfer form with a chained pen. Name, amount, destination. Her handwriting looked thinner than usual. The clerk glanced at the form. He looked maybe 19. Tired, acne at the jawline, expression already gone with boredom. "You know the person you're sending this to?" "Yes," Elena said. "You sent money to him before?" "No." He looked up for the first time. Not suspicious exactly. Just awake enough now to register the country listed on the form. "You know him personally?" The right answer was no. Or not in any way that would have helped. But Jean-Luc had video called her. He had sent voice notes. He had shown her hotel rooms, airport terminals, one rainy street in Paris. He had listened to her talk about Rosa's surgery. He had once stayed on the phone while she cried after a fight with Sophia and said nothing clever, nothing manipulative, just breathed there with her until she calmed down. "Yes," she said. The clerk shrugged and processed the transfer. When he handed over the receipt, it felt absurdly light in her fingers. All that money gone, represented by a piece of curling paper and a transaction number. Back in the car, she took a picture and sent it. Done. No answer. She told herself he might be in transit, in a meeting, on a plane, asleep. She drove home through streets washed gold by the late desert sun. At a red light, she checked again. Nothing. When she pulled into the driveway, Rosa's text was waiting. "Don't forget to call the insurance office tomorrow. Also pick up my prescription if you pass Walgreens." Elena stared at the message until guilt moved through her like heat. She typed back, "Okay," and sat there a few seconds longer before going inside. Rosa was in the living room with her bad leg raised, a church bulletin in her lap, and the television low. "You look tired," Rosa said. "Long day. There's Paulo in the fridge. Maybe later." Rosa watched her too closely. "Did you call the insurance people?" "Not yet." "Tomorrow." "Tomorrow." There were moments with Rosa when Elena could almost forget the hierarchy inside love. Then there were moments like this, when every practical question from her mother felt like a measurement Elena was failing in real time. She made it to the bathroom before checking her phone again. Still nothing. She refreshed the email, then the message thread, then his profile. The photo was gone first. Then the thread glitched and kicked her out. Then a page loaded with nothing on it but an error message and a blank circle where his face had been. She stared so long her own reflection dimmed behind the screen. No, she tried calling. Once, twice. The first call failed almost immediately. The second did not even pretend to connect. She emailed. The reply bounced back. And then, because the human mind is cruel, all the little things she had not wanted to examine rose at once and arranged themselves into a picture she could no longer refuse to see. Nigeria. The urgency. The gift too large to be tasteful and too vague to be verified. The way he had praised her caution while steering her past it. The way he had always been just convincing enough. Just glamorous enough, just wounded enough to make suspicion feel cheap. A scam. Not a misunderstanding, not a delay. A scam. She put her hand over her mouth because the sound that came out of her then did not sound like crying, so much as being punched somewhere internal and irreversible. That was where Rosa found her 20 minutes later, just as the television laughter rose from the next room. There was a knock at the door. "Elena?" "I'm fine." "Open." She flushed the toilet for no reason. wiped under her eyes with toilet paper, unlocked the door. Rosa stood there in slippers, one hand braced against the wall. Up close, the pain around her eyes was more visible. Not dramatic pain, worn down pain. The kind that had been asked to wait too long. "What happened to your face?" Rosa asked. "Nothing. Your eyes are red." "Dust." At this hour? From the bar, Rosa kept looking at her. Elena could feel the lie sitting between them, breathing. Finally, Rosa said, "You ate?" "No." "Then eat." "I'm not hungry." Elena, only her name. No lecture, no extra force. Rosa did not have the energy for deeper interrogation tonight, and Elena hated that fact almost as much as she depended on it. In the kitchen, she spooned chicken and rice onto a plate and could barely swallow 2 bites. The hospital paperwork sat by the microwave under a magnet. Rosa's prescription bottle stood by the sink. The card for the surgery appointment was pinned to the bulletin board with a dried palm cross from church. Everything looked accusatory. She took her phone and stepped out to the back porch. The yard was a rectangle of dirt and weeds under weak yellow porch light. Somewhere down the alley, someone's radio played low enough to be only bass. She called Sophia before she could think herself out of it. Sophia answered with, "What?" "No, hello." Hospital noise in the background, a rolling cart, distant voices, an announcement overhead. "Are you working?" Elena asked. "What does it sound like?" "I need to ask you something." A pause. "Okay. Do you have any money?" Another pause, longer this time, sharper. "How much?" 1,000. $1,000? Sophia said it low, flat. "For what?" "For Mom." "What about Mom?" Elena stared out at the fence. "Just surgery stuff." "What surgery stuff?" "I don't know, extra stuff." That's not an answer. The old irritation flared, immediate and stupid. Sophia did not even have to raise her voice. She had a way of sounding like the adult in the room before she reached 25. "Can you lend it or not?" Elena asked. "I might be able to get some. Not 1,000, but I'm not sending money blind." "It's not blind. It is if you won't tell me what happened." "Nothing happened." "That means something happened." Elena pressed her thumb into the porch railing until it hurt. "Did Mom ask you to call me?" Sophia asked. "No." "Then why are you asking?" "Because I thought maybe you'd help me without making me feel like an idiot first." On the other end, Sophia went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was more tired than angry. "I'm trying to understand what's going on." Elena heard the pity underneath that and felt shame rise so hard she went cold. Then Sophia said very carefully, "Did some man ask you for money?" Everything inside Elena locked up. "No." "Elena, no." Another silence. Sophia knew her. That was the problem. Sophia loved her, but she knew her through the lens of every unfinished thing Elena had ever been. "I have to go," Elena said. "Wait." She hung up. The yard was still. The porch light buzzed. Inside, Rosa laughed once at the television and then coughed. Elena stood there longer than she needed to, staring at the dirt, the broken plastic chair near the fence, the dark rectangle of the neighbor's yard beyond. She could not tell her mother. She could not tell Sophia. Not yet, maybe not ever. The humiliation was too complete. Not just that she had been scammed, that she had been scammed by exactly the kind of fantasy everybody would expect her to fall for. A handsome man, a rich man, a polished man from someplace farther and better than this. A man who made her feel chosen. Back in her room, she opened the calendar. 12 days until Rosa's surgery. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened the Notes app. Ask Manny for more shifts. Sell earrings. Credit card cash advance. Call Tio Carlos. Maybe church help. Do not tell Mom. Do not tell Sophia. She stared at the list. Tio Carlos might lend her money. He drove long haul and always had cash somewhere, folded into envelopes, tucked into the wrong jacket pocket, hidden in the glove compartment of the truck. He hated lies, but he loved family in a blunt, practical way that sometimes looked like rescue. And Father Miguel at Our Lady of Guadalupe might know of some emergency fund, though the thought of sitting in that office, explaining even half of this, made her skin crawl. He was one of those gentlemen who made shame worse by not weaponizing it. You had to hear yourself clearly around people like that. Still, they were options. She had options. That was what she told herself when she went back into the bathroom and turned on the bright light again. Her face looked swollen now. Eyeliner smudged, cheeks blotchy, one hoop earring missing, hair frizzing at the temples. She smelled like beer, citrus, and the cheap floral soap from the grocery store bathroom, where she had washed her hands after sending away the money. She looked like a woman who had betrayed herself first and her mother second. For one reckless second, she imagined opening Rose's bedroom door and saying it plain. "Mom, I took the surgery money because a handsome man online Said he loved me and sent me a luxury gift, and I wanted to believe him because I wanted my life to get bigger than this. The humiliation of it almost made her laugh. No, not tonight. Maybe not ever. She gripped the sink and stared at herself until the face in the mirror felt like someone she had to manage, not someone she understood. Mierda, she whispered. Then, because somebody had to say it, because she could not bear the silence otherwise, she looked herself in the eye and said, "You'll fix it." It sounded thin, panicked, false. She swallowed and tried again. "You have to fix it." From Rose's room, the television carried through the hall, a bright male host shouting over applause. Some game show or variety program she watched when the pain in her knee made sleep impossible. Life going on in the next room. Her mother still awake. Her mother still not knowing. Elena turned off the bathroom light and stepped into the dark hall. For a moment she stood there with her hand on the doorframe, listening to the house breathe around her. The television, the rattle of the AC. Rosa shifting on the sofa, or maybe in bed now, careful with the bad leg. Then Elena went back to her room and closed the door on the first lie. The doors that closed. Elena got to the bar 20 minutes early and found Rick unlocking the side door with a ring of keys clipped to his belt. He looked up surprised. "You okay?" "Yeah." She forced a small smile and stepped inside behind him. "You got a second?" The bar still smelled like bleach from the night cleaner and stale beer that never fully left the wood. Daylight came through the front windows too honestly, showing every scratch on the tables, every scuffed edge of the booths. Without music and customers and dim light, the place looked tired, like somebody's garage had decided to pretend. Rick dropped a crate of limes by the sink. "What's up?" Elena set her purse under the counter. "I was wondering if you had any extra shifts this week, or next week. I can cover doubles if anybody calls out." Rick did not answer right away. He reached for the clipboard by the register, glanced at the schedule as if maybe a new answer had appeared there overnight, then shook his head. "I'm sorry," he said. "We're slow right now. I can do patio too, or inventory. I know you can. I could come in for the Sunday brunch thing. We already cut Janelle on Sunday." He said it gently, but that made it worse. If he had sounded annoyed, Elena could have leaned back into pride. Instead, he just looked tired, like a man already explaining numbers to too many people. "We've been dead all month," he said. "I'm trying not to send people home early as it is." Elena nodded once. "Okay." Rick watched her a second longer. "Everything all right?" "Yeah." "You sure?" "Just bills." That, at least, was true enough to pass. He gave her the kind of look people gave when they knew there was more, but had already decided not to ask for it. "If somebody drops a shift, I'll text you." "Thanks." He picked up the crate and headed toward the kitchen. "You can clock in now if you want. Megan's not here till noon." At the sound of Megan's name, something in Elena lifted and then checked itself. Megan might help. Not the whole amount, maybe, but some. A few hundred. Enough to change the shape of the problem. She tied on her apron and cut limes at the prep sink, her fingers slick with juice, trying not to keep counting in her head. 10 days. The number had lost any clean shape by now. It was not a calendar number anymore, and it was a pressure. Rose's surgery was in 10 days. The $1,000 was still gone. The account still sat there, hollowed out, and Elena had spent the last 2 nights waking every hour with the same thought already waiting for her. You need to put it back before she checks. Around 11:30, Megan came in with her hair still damp from the shower, eyeliner half done, iced coffee in one hand and car keys in the other. She nudged Elena with her elbow on the way behind the bar. "You look like shit." "Thanks." "You're welcome." Megan set her coffee down. "Did you sleep?" "Not really." "You sick?" "No." Megan glanced at her sideways. "Guy stuff?" Elena kept slicing oranges. "Why does everybody think everything is guy stuff?" "Because when it's not guy stuff, you just say what it is." That was Megan. Fast, blunt, not mean unless she meant to be. They had known each other since sophomore year through cheap eyeliner, bad apartments, fake IDs, 3 different restaurants, Megan's terrible ex with the neck tattoo, Elena's year of saying she was going back to school and never actually doing it. Megan was one of the few people Elena could still imagine calling at 2 in the morning without rehearsing first. Which was probably why she waited until lunch lull when Rick was in the office and the bar was empty except for one man eating wings in silence, to say it. "Can I ask you something weird?" Megan was polishing wine glasses. "That depends." Elena dried her hands on a towel. "Could you lend me money?" Megan stopped polishing. Not dramatically. Just enough for the pause to register. "How much?" Elena looked down at the cut fruit tray. 1,000. Megan let out a breath through her nose. "Jesus." "I know. What happened?" "Nothing happened. I just need it." Megan set the glass down. "That's not how borrowing $1,000 works." "I know, okay? So tell me." Elena picked up a knife she did not need and moved a lime wedge from one side of the tray to the other. It's just temporary. For what? My mom. Megan waited. Elena could feel the lie forming and already sounding weak. Surgery stuff. What surgery stuff? Just stuff around it. That's not an answer either. I know. Megan leaned back against the sink, folding the bar towel in half, then in half again. If you needed like 100, 200, I could maybe do that, maybe, but 1,000? She shook her head. No, I can't. Elena nodded too fast, like she had expected the answer, and was above disappointment. Miguel and I are trying to save for the wedding, Megan said. You know that. I know. And the car's been making that stupid noise again. It's fine. It's not fine. Megan stopped herself. I'm not saying no because I don't care. Elena's face grew hot anyway. I didn't say you were. Megan studied her. Are you in some kind of trouble? No. That sounded like yes. It's not. Megan's voice got softer. Did some guy do something? Elena laughed once, too sharp. Why does everybody keep asking that? Because you look embarrassed, not broke. For a second, Elena could not think of anything to say. Megan caught it. Her eyes narrowed, not with judgment exactly, but with recognition of a door cracking open. Elena, it's nothing. Then why are you acting like that? Forget it, I shouldn't have asked. Megan pushed the towel aside and came closer, lowering her voice because of the customer at the end of the bar. Hey, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm trying to understand if you need help. The kindness in that made Elena want to leave her own body. It's handled, she said. Megan kept looking at her. Then she nodded once, slow and unconvinced. Okay. But it was not okay. Elena knew that from the way Megan said it, from the way she picked up the glasses again but kept glancing over later, like Elena had become a thing in the room that might fall. At 3, Elena sat in her Civic in the back lot behind the bar, with the windows down, and the heat leaning in through the open frames. The car was a 2008 Honda with faded paint on the roof and a passenger door that sometimes only locked on the second try. The fabric on the ceiling sagged a little over the rearview mirror. A Saint card Rosa had tucked into the visor years ago peeked out at one corner. Elena rested both hands on the steering wheel and stared at the dashboard. $500 maybe. Not because the car was worth $500 to her, because that was what the world would probably say it was worth now. Enough miles, enough dents, enough years. She had already looked up a few places on her phone during break. One was 6 minutes away. If she sold it, she could make a dent in the problem. If she sold it, Rosa would have no ride to the hospital. The thought sat there a while, and because she had run out of better thoughts, Elena turned the key and drove. The used car lot was smaller than it had looked online. Pennant flags snapped overhead in the dry breeze. Half the windshields had fluorescent marker prices on them, all of it hopeful in a cheap, exhausted way. A man in a polo shirt came out of the office before Elena even fully parked. You selling or buying? Maybe selling. He smiled the smile of someone who would be disappointed either way, but had practice hiding it. Let me take a look. Elena followed him around the Civic while he crouched, checked the tires, peered through the windows, asked for the mileage. You got the title? At home. He nodded like he already knew where this was going. Any major issues? The AC takes a minute. He grunted. Everybody's AC takes a minute. A few minutes later, he came back with a number on a carbon copy sheet. $500. Elena looked at it without reacting. That's it? The man shrugged. Older Honda, cosmetic wear, high mileage. It'll need some work before I can put it out front. It runs. I'm sure it does. She stood there with the paper in her hand and the lot humming around her. The road noise, the crackle of a radio from the office, flags snapping overhead. 500. Half the money she needed. And afterward, she would still be short. Still lying. Still needing rides. Still figuring out how to get Rosa 30 minutes across the city for pre-op, surgery, follow-up. You want to do it? The man asked. Elena pictured Rosa easing herself into the passenger seat, one hand gripping the dashboard every time Elena took a turn too fast. She pictured asking Sophia for rides and hearing the questions under every answer. She pictured waiting for buses in Phoenix heat with hospital paperwork in her purse. No, she said. The man nodded once, unsurprised. All right. He took the paper back from her before she changed her mind. That annoyed her more than it should have. On the drive home, traffic thickened near a light by an auto parts store. Elena sat through 2 cycles because an ambulance had to cut across. She watched a landscaper truck roll by with mowers strapped down and back, 2 men in long sleeves despite the heat, dust on the windows, and felt a wave of tiredness so complete it seemed to erase not only the day, but everything after it too. At home, Rosa was at the dining table instead of the sofa, reading something through her glasses with her sewing machine pushed aside to make room. Her knee brace was on. A glass of water sat beside her hand. "What happened to you?" Rosa asked when Elena came in. "You're late again." "I stopped somewhere." "Where?" "El Super." Rosa glanced at the grocery bags, or rather the lack of them. "And? I didn't buy anything?" That was careless. Elena knew it the second it came out. Rosa folded the paper in front of her. "Come here." Elena set her keys on the counter and walked over. It was the surgery packet. Insurance estimate on one page, hospital instructions on another, a list of medications Rosa had to stop before the procedure. Rosa tapped one line with one finger. "They want the payment settled this week," she said. "Not the whole surgery, just what they told us already." "I know. So tomorrow or the next day, take it out." Elena's skin prickled under her t-shirt. "Take what out?" "From the account." She looked at the papers instead of Rosa. "Not tomorrow." "Why not?" "Because I moved some of it." Rosa was quiet. Elena could hear the refrigerator motor kick on behind her, the rattle in the AC vent, a dog barking somewhere down the block. "I moved it to another account," Elena said. "A savings one, with better interest. It takes a few days." The lie came out too smooth in structure and too strained in sound. She heard it herself. So did Rosa. "Interest," Rosa repeated. "Yeah. For how long?" "A few days, maybe 3. Rosa said nothing. Elena lifted her gaze. Her mother was not looking angry. Angry would have been easier. She looked tired, careful, like she was trying to place a sound she had heard before. Elena hated that expression because it reached farther back than this week, farther back than Jean-Luc, all the way into the old family arrangement where Sophia knew what she was doing and Elena was always one bad decision away from becoming a lesson. "I didn't ask you to move it," Rosa said. "I know, I was trying to help. With interest." "It was stupid, I know, but it'll be back." Rosa nodded once, slowly. Not agreement, just receipt. "All right," she said. That was worse than a fight. "You believe me?" Elena asked before she could stop herself. Rosa took off her glasses and set them down on the table. "Why would you ask me that, unless there is something to believe?" Elena stood very still. From the kitchen window over the sink, late light fell across the table in a dull orange rectangle. It caught the gray in Rosa's hair, the small lines around her mouth, the fatigue she carried now, even when sitting down. "Nothing," Elena said. "Forget it." Rosa looked at her a moment longer, then reached for the glass of water. "Call the pharmacy before they close." Elena did. Afterward, she took the laundry basket into her room and pretended to fold clothes while her phone sat beside her on the bed, mute and guilty-looking. Megan had texted once. "You okay?" Elena had not answered. At 7:30, Sophia called. Elena knew it would be Sophia the second the screen lit up. She almost let it ring out. Then she answered because not answering would be worse. "What?" "Wow," Sophia said. "Nice." Elena sat down on the edge of the bed. "Sorry." There was hospital noise behind Sophia again, but less of it now. Doors opening somewhere. A cart squeaking. She must have stepped into a hallway or stairwell because her voice came clearer on the next sentence. "Mom said you've been acting weird." Elena closed her eyes. "Did she?" "She said you got home late and you told her something about moving money. It's handled." "What's handled?" "The account." "Why did you move it?" "Because I thought it made sense." "For a surgery fund you knew she needed this week?" The irritation came fast. "I said it's handled." "Then explain it." "No, a beat." Sophia let out a breath, not loud, just enough to show she was forcing herself to stay level. "What's going on with you?" "Nothing." "That's not true." "It is true." "Elena." There it was again, that tone. The one that made Elena feel younger than she was. Not because Sophia was cruel. Because Sophia was so practiced at asking direct questions and wading through weak answers that everybody around her ended up sounding evasive, childish, guilty. "I'm tired," Elena said. "Can we not do this? You asked me for $1,000 2 nights ago." Elena's grip tightened on the phone. "You told me it was for Mom." "It is." "Then why doesn't your story sound the same twice?" Elena stared at the open closet, at Rosa's church shoes on the floor beside her own work sneakers. "I said I'm handling it." "With what money?" Silence. "Elena, stop." "With what money?" I said stop. Sophia went quiet then, and for a second Elena thought maybe she had pushed too far and the call would end. Instead, Sophia spoke more softly. "If you need something, say it." The words should have felt like help. They didn't. Not exactly. There was love in them, yes, but also warning. Attention. Sophia no longer merely suspected that something was wrong. She had shifted into the posture of someone keeping watch. "I don't," Elena said. "Then stop making Mom nervous." "She's nervous because of surgery." "She's nervous because you're lying." Elena stood up too fast and hit her knee on the bed frame. I'm not lying. On the other end, Sophia did not answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice had gone flat. Okay? That one word carried more disbelief than if she had argued. I have to go, Elena said. Fine. Before hanging up, Sophia added, if you need anything, tell me. Don't make Mom find out something the hard way. Then the line clicked dead. Elena stood in the middle of her room with the phone still at her ear. From the living room came the sound of a Spanish commercial, too cheerful to bear. Rosa shifting in her chair. The hum of the old refrigerator. The house had become full of pauses. Every room seemed to wait for her to say something she could not say. She took her keys and went back outside. The Civic was still warm from the day. She sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. The windshield held a faint reflection of the porch light and the dark shape of the house behind it. Beyond the roofs, the sky had gone from bruised purple to almost black, but Phoenix never got fully dark. There was always a glow somewhere. Streetlights, parking lots, freeways. The city had a way of keeping its distance even when it was right there. Elena laid her forehead against the steering wheel. Megan had said no. The car lot had said 500. Rosa had heard the lie inside the lie. Sophia was watching now, not casually, not from the side, watching. 10 days. She lifted her head and looked through the windshield at nothing. There were other people she could call. Technically. Men from the bar who flirted badly and tipped worse. Old classmates she hadn't talked to in years. One cousin in Mesa who would tell his mother before the call even ended. None of those were real options. Not for $1,000. Not without explanation. Not without letting the humiliation widen until it became public property. Then, because she had been holding the thought off all day, Tio Carlos arrived in her mind with the solidity of a truck turning into a driveway. Carlos in his modest stucco house on the west side where he stayed between long-haul runs. Carlos with his short replies, his thermos coffee, his work boots by the door. Carlos who kept cash longer than most people because he trusted paper more than screens. Carlos who had helped pay for Sophia's MCAT prep course without ever calling it help. Carlos who never asked too many questions right away, which could feel like mercy until it turned out to be the part that trapped you. If Elena went to him, she would have to lie better than she had lied to Rosa. That thought should have stopped her. Instead, it felt like the first thing all day with edges. She unlocked her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Her thumb hovered over his name, Tio Carlos. She stared at it a few seconds longer as if something in her might still stop the next part. Then she opened the message box. Tio, can I come by tomorrow? I need to ask you something. She looked at the sentence. Too formal. Too strange. She deleted it and typed again. Tio, can I come over and ask you for a favor? That looked more like her. More like family. More dangerous, maybe, because family language always made the ask bigger. She sent it before she could edit again. The 3 dots appeared almost at once. Yeah, come tomorrow. I'll be home all day. Elena stared at the reply until the screen dimmed. Then she let the phone fall onto the passenger seat and sat there in the darkening car, one hand still on the steering wheel. The porch light from the house laying a weak yellow bar across the dashboard. She exhaled slowly. Tomorrow, then. The dead of the lie. Elena drove to South Phoenix with both hands tight on the wheel and the lie moving through her head in a loop that kept changing shape every few minutes. The washing machine was broken. No, not broken, leaking. No, that invited follow-up questions. Broken was cleaner. The washing machine was broken and she wanted to replace it before Rosa noticed, because Rosa had enough on her mind already. She would pay him back in 3 months. Probably less. Work had been slow, but she was picking up extra shifts. She had it handled. Every version sounded thin by the time she reached the freeway exit. By then, the morning had already gone hot. The sun was high and flat, bleaching the color out of the stucco houses and chain-link fences. A landscaper truck rumbled past her at a light, leaf blowers rattling in the back. She kept rehearsing anyway, one hand lifting from the wheel now and then as if she were shaping the air with the sentence, trying to make it sound more like something a normal person would say, and less like something that had been built to survive 5 minutes of scrutiny. Her phone sat in the cup holder, face up. No new texts from Sophia. No missed calls from Rosa. That should have helped. It didn't. Tio Carlos lived in a small, single-story house on a quiet street where the gravel yards were swept neat and potted plants sat in clusters under shaded porches. His truck was already outside, big and white and sun-glared, with the company logo fading on one side of the cab. Seeing it there made something in Elena tighten. If the truck was home, then he was home for real, not just passing through. Coffee on, TV low, questions waiting. She parked at the curb and sat there a moment longer, Fingers still on the keys, though the engine was already off. The lie again. Washing machine. A surprise for Mom. 3 months. She got out before she could decide to leave. Carlos opened the door before she knocked a second time. He was taller than Elena remembered every time, broad through the shoulders, his t-shirt stretched across a stomach that had gone soft but not weak. His skin had the deep, baked color of somebody who spent years getting in and out of trucks in desert sun. Gray had worked into his mustache and at the temples. His forearms were thick and dark with old sun, the hands heavily lined, nicked, calloused. He smelled faintly of coffee and laundry detergent. "Mija," he said, stepping back, "come in." His English always carried a weight of Spanish under it. Not heavy, just there, a certain shape in the vowels. Elena bent and kissed his cheek. "Hi, Tio. You ate?" She almost laughed. In this family, that was either love or surveillance. Sometimes both. "Not yet." He frowned a little. "Then first coffee." "I'm okay." "You look like you're not okay." He said it without drama, like a weather report. Then he turned and walked toward the kitchen, assuming she would follow. The house was cool and dim after the street. There was a leather recliner by the television, a Virgin de Guadalupe on the wall near the hallway, family photos in mismatched frames, Rosa younger and thinner in one, Sophia in a graduation gown in another, Elena at maybe 13 squinting against the sun with bangs she had hated. The place smelled like Folgers, tortillas, and the faint trapped odor of a man who spent half his life on the road and the other half trying not to notice the silence when he got home. Carlos poured coffee into 2 thick mugs, added sugar to his without asking, and nodded toward the table. "So," he said, what happened?" Elena wrapped both hands around the mug, even though it was too hot. "Nothing happened." Carlos sat across from her. "Then why are you here at 10 in the morning, looking like you didn't sleep?" She kept her eyes on the coffee. "I needed to ask you something." "I know that part." He waited. That was one of the hard things about him. He did not rush to fill silence for other people. He let them sit in it until they either told the truth or built something convincing enough to stand there in its place. Elena took a breath. The washing machine at the house broke. Carlos said nothing. "She doesn't know yet," Elena added. "Mom, I didn't want to tell her because of the surgery and everything. I just wanted to take care of it." He kept looking at her. "It's old anyway," Elena said. "It was probably going to go soon." "How much?" $1,000. Carlos leaned back a little in his chair. $1,000 washing machine. Elena forced a shrug. "With delivery." The coffee was too hot to drink, so she lifted it and pretended anyway. Carlos folded one hand over the other on the table. "Why you don't put it on a card?" "I don't want to." "That's not what I asked." "My card's almost full." That part at least was true, and Rosa doesn't know. "No. So you want me to loan you money for a machine in her house she doesn't know is broken?" When you say it like that, When I say it like what? Elena looked up then and immediately wished she hadn't. Carlos was not angry. Angry would have been easier. He looked patient in a way that made her feel cheap. "I'm trying to help her," she said. "With a surprise washing machine? Why are you making it sound stupid?" He did not answer right away. He reached for his mug, took one slow sip, and set it back down. "Because it sounds stupid," he said. Heat rose into Elena's face. The kitchen suddenly felt too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator. A car passing outside. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and stopped. Carlos tilted his head. "Why not tell me the real thing?" "That is the real thing. Mija." That one word made the lie wobble. Elena curled her fingers tighter around the mug. "I can pay you back. 3 months, max." Carlos kept watching her. Then he pushed back his chair a little, stood, and reached for his phone on the counter. "All right," he said. "I call your mother." Elena stood so fast the chair legs scraped. "No." Carlos paused, the phone already in his hand. "Why not?" "She's tired." "For 1 minute on the phone?" "She's been stressed about the surgery. I don't want to make her worry." "If I ask her one question, that's worry?" "Elena, what did you do?" he asked. He did not raise his voice. That made it land harder. "Nothing." Carlos looked at the phone, then back at her. "Then why are you acting like this?" Because Jean-Luc had never existed. Because the money was gone, and back again, and gone, and almost back. Because Rosa was already watching her, and Sophia had started checking details, and every lie now had smaller lies hanging off it like loose threads. Because the thought of Carlos calling Rosa and saying "your daughter says the washer broke" would split open in less than 30 seconds. She heard herself say too quickly, "Please don't call her." Carlos held still. "Please," she said again, quieter now. "She doesn't need this right now. I'm asking you. I'll pay you back. 3 months." His eyes stayed on her face for a long second, then another. There was enough family history in that silence to make Elena feel physically tired. He had seen her at 8 with scabbed knees and too much attitude. At 16, slamming out of Rose's car after a fight. At 22, drunk and crying at a cousin's wedding because some man had disappeared. He knew the versions of her that insisted they were fine when they were nowhere near fine. But he also loved her. That was the problem with family. Love made people dangerous to lie to and possible to lie to at the same time. Carlos slowly set the phone back on the counter. "All right," he said. Elena let out a breath so shallow it barely counted. "But I don't like it." "I know. That's not the same as listening." He walked past her into the hall. For one terrible second, she thought he was going to Rosa anyway. Instead, he disappeared into the back room. Elena stood alone in the kitchen with her coffee cooling and the Virgin on the wall, looking past her shoulder. When Carlos came back, he had an envelope in his hand. He set it on the table between them. "Elena." She looked at him. "I'm trusting you." The envelope looked too plain for what it was. Just white paper, slightly bent at one corner. "I know." "No," he nudged it once with 2 fingers. "Listen, I'm trusting you. That is different." Elena swallowed. He went on slower now, choosing the words the way older men did when they wanted the sentence to keep working after they left the room. "If this is what you say it is, fine. If it's not, then whatever it is, don't make it bigger." "I won't." "You already look like it's bigger." She looked down. Carlos sighed, not impatiently, just tired. "Don't do something dumb because you're ashamed of something small." For a second, she thought he knew. Not the details, not Jean-Luc or Western Union or the vanished profile picture. Just the shape of it. Shame first, stupidity second, then all the work people did trying to reverse the order. But he only pulled his chair back and lifted his coffee and said, "You gonna count it?" "No, you should always count money." She gave a tight little smile and opened the envelope. $100 bills. Her hands were steady enough now, which scared her more than if they'd been shaking. "Thank you," she said. "When you paying it back?" 3 months. "Mm-hmm. I will." "I didn't say you won't." That was worse. Carlos walked her to the door. On the porch, the heat hit again, dry and immediate. He stood in the shade with one hand on the frame. "How's your mother really?" he asked. "Okay." "And Sophia?" "Busy." "She still thinks she knows everything?" Despite herself, Elena smiled. "Yeah." Carlos grunted. "Good, somebody should." Then his face changed a little, not softened exactly, just steadied. "If Rosa needs anything, you tell me direct. Don't get clever." "I know." He kept looking at her. Elena kissed his cheek again, thanked him once more, and walked back to the car with the envelope in her purse, feeling heavier than cash had any right to feel. On the drive home, she stopped first at the bank. The branch parking lot was half full, sun flashing on windshields. Inside, the AC was cold enough to make her arms pebble. A television in the corner ran muted financial news and no one was watching. Elena filled out the deposit slip at the standing counter, with her body angled instinctively away from everyone else, as if what she was doing could still be hidden by posture. She deposited the 1,000 into the joint account. Just like that, the number would be whole again. Rosa could check and see what she expected to see. The surgery money would be there. Elena should have felt relieved, cleansed almost. The worst breach closed over. Instead, she left the bank with the strange, sick feeling of having successfully concealed something rotten. In the parking lot, she sat behind the wheel and opened the app to confirm the deposit had posted. It had. The balance looked normal, innocent, undeserving of the morning that had produced it. Her phone buzzed. For one second, she thought it might be Carlos saying he had changed his mind, that he wanted the truth, that he had called Rosa after all. But it was only a pharmacy reminder. She drove home with the radio off. Rosa was in the living room when Elena got back, her bad leg up on the stool, the TV low, a basket of folded laundry beside her that Elena knew she had been told not to touch. She glanced up from a Spanish talk show. "You were gone a long time." "I had errands." Rosa looked at her a moment. "Did you eat?" "Not yet. There are tamales in the fridge." "Okay." Elena stood there, waiting for more. A question about where, a question about what errands, a question about the account. But Rosa only adjusted the blanket over her knee and looked back at the television. That should have felt like mercy. Instead, it made Elena feel as if the house itself had started keeping score silently. She ate one tamale standing at the counter and barely tasted it. The masa sat heavy in her mouth. The kitchen smelled like warmed corn husks and dish soap. Her purse stayed on the chair beside her with Carlos's absence inside it. The money gone now, translated into numbers again. But the debt intact. Upstairs. No, not upstairs. There was no upstairs. That was the kind of thought Jean-Luc had liked. Little aspirational mistakes, language from bigger houses. Elena caught herself and almost laughed. She carried her plate to the sink and went to her room. For about an hour, nothing happened. She changed her shirt. She folded laundry badly and redid it. She checked the account twice more, even though she already knew the deposit had gone through. She nearly texted Megan back and didn't. She thought about texting Carlos another thank you and didn't do that either because anything in writing suddenly felt dangerous. At 6:30, just as the evening light started turning the room the color of weak tea, her phone lit up with a text from Sophia. "Hey, where'd you go today?" "Mom said you left in the morning." Elena stared at it. A simple question, normal sister question, maybe. Maybe not. Work. Then she waited. The three dots appeared almost immediately. Work where? She frowned. The bar. This time the pause was longer. This morning, something cold moved through her. Elena sat down on the bed. "Yeah, why?" The reply came back. "Because the bar was closed this morning for maintenance. Megan posted about it. You forgot?" For a second, Elena did not fully understand what she was reading. The words sat there in the bright little message bubble, plain and devastating in the way plain things often were. She opened Instagram with clumsy fingers. There it was. A story from Megan posted around 10:30, a selfie in her kitchen with the caption, "Unexpected day off because the bar's water got shut off, lol." Elena closed the app at once, as if that could undo the fact of it. Her room had gone very still. She could hear Rosa laughing faintly at something on television in the other room. A cabinet door closing. The AC kicking on. Sophia had checked. Not guessed, not worried in a vague younger sister way, checked. Elena stared at the message thread. Her thumbs hovered over the keyboard. "I went in anyway. Rick needed..." No, too messy. Delete. "I was at the bank after." Delete. "Why are you stalking Megan's stories?" Delete. What she wanted to type was, "Because I'm drowning, and you keep standing on the dock asking for better explanations." What she wanted to type was, "Because I needed the money back before Mom found out. And I can't tell you why. Because then you'll look at me like everybody else does when I've done something stupid enough to become educational." What she wanted to type was, "Please help me." Instead, she sat there, phone hot in her hand, and let the shame harden into anger because anger was easier to hold. Another message came in from Sophia. "What's going on?" Elena looked at the words until they blurred. The Vietnamese pulled at her more than the English would have. Softer on the surface, more dangerous underneath. She typed, "Nothing, stop checking up on me." She stared at it, too revealing. Delete. She typed again. "I had things to do, don't worry about it." Too weak. Delete. She set the phone down, picked it up again, and stood, suddenly unable to stay on the bed. She crossed to the dresser, came back, sat, stood again. From the hallway came Rose's cough, then silence, then the TV rising again. The phone buzzed once more. "If you need something, say it, but don't lie to me." There it was, not a guess anymore, not an open door. A line. Elena sat back down. Her thumbs moved before she fully decided. "Don't make this a thing." She sent it and hated it instantly. Petty. Adolescent. Not even a convincing deflection. Sophia did not answer for almost a minute. "Hey sister, if you don't want to tell me, fine, but don't pull Mom into whatever this is." Elena read the message once, then again. From the living room, Rosa called her name, asking if she had seen the remote. Elena swallowed and answered, "No," but her voice came out too thin, and Rosa did not respond. She looked back at Sophia's text. "Don't pull Mom into whatever this is." The worst part was not that it sounded accusing. The worst part was that it was precise. Because Rosa was already in it. Rosa had been in it from the first transfer, from the first lie about interest, from the first moment Elena decided that protecting her mother from stress and protecting herself from humiliation were close enough to confuse on purpose. "You don't know what you're talking about." She stared at it. It wasn't true. She deleted it. After that, she typed nothing. The house had gone quieter, the TV lower now, water running briefly in the kitchen sink. The familiar evening sounds of a house not yet asleep but already folding inward. Elena locked the phone and sat there with it in both hands. Then she turned the screen off completely and set it face down on the bed. A minute later, she picked it up again, opened the thread, and read Sophia's last message one more time. "If you don't want to tell me, fine, but don't pull Mom into whatever this is." Elena set the phone down for good this time. She lay forward slowly until her face hit the pillow, one arm folded under her, the other hanging off the side of the bed. The room smelled faintly of detergent and old heat and the tamale she had barely eaten. In the wall behind her head, the AC rattled on. She wanted to answer Sophia with something sharp enough to protect herself. She wanted to say, "You don't understand anything," but the words would not come because Sophia understood enough. That was the problem. Elena turned the phone all the way off, pressed her forehead deeper into the pillow, and stayed there in the dim room while the house moved carefully around her, as if nothing in it had changed and as if everything had. The crack. Elena, come here a second. Rosa's voice came from the living room. Not loud, not sharp. That made Elena put down the glass she was drying before she had fully decided to. A minute earlier, she had been at the kitchen sink, trying to stay busy with nothing, rinsing the same plate twice, wiping down an already clean counter, listening to the low murmur of the Spanish morning show from the other room, and pretending it was an ordinary day. Now there was something in Rosa's tone that flattened the air. Elena dried her hands on a dish towel and stepped into the living room. Rosa was sitting at the old folding table by the window with the laptop open in front of her. She wore her glasses low on her nose, one hand resting on the edge of the table, the other on the mouse. Her bad leg was stretched out with a pillow under the knee. Beside the computer sat the surgery packet, a pen in the envelope from the hospital with the payment instructions inside. Sunlight came through the curtains in thin stripes, catching the gray in Rosa's hair and the dust on the sewing machine in the corner. What? Elena asked. Rosa did not answer right away. She looked at the screen once more, then up at Elena. Come here. Elena came closer. On the laptop screen was the joint savings account. The balance sat there in clean black numbers. 1,043.20. Elena's body went very still. Rosa touched the screen lightly with one finger, not because the numbers needed pointing out, but because her hands always wanted something to do when she was upset. I don't understand, she said. Elena looked at the screen and then at her mother and then back at the screen as if confusion might be built by repetition. What? Rosa's eyes stayed on her face. There should be more. The room seemed suddenly too bright. Elena could hear the AC rattle in the wall, the distant hiss of traffic outside, a host on television laughing somewhere behind them and then being muted when Rosa reached for the remote without looking. It says 1,043, Rosa said. There should be over 2. Elena's mouth had already gone dry. The deposit from Carlos was there. She knew it was there. She had seen it. But the original amount before she took the money, before everything, had been higher than what Rosa was seeing now. Rosa knew the number better than Elena had let herself remember. Of course she did. Rosa had built it dollar by dollar. Elena had only been the one with the password. She heard herself say too quickly, I took some out. Rosa did not blink. How much? 1,000. The silence after that was almost mild. No crash, no explosion. Just Rosa sitting there, with one hand still on the table, and that careful expression settling over her face. The one Elena had hated since childhood because it always meant her mother was giving her one last chance to become less disappointing. For what? Rosa asked. Elena had not prepared this lie, not this exact version. She reached for the first thing that felt half solid. The car. Rosa kept looking at her. It needed repairs, Elena said. I didn't want to worry you before the surgery. I was going to put it back this week. What repairs? Elena swallowed. Transmission stuff. It was a bad choice. She knew almost nothing about transmissions. But she had already said it, and now it existed between them. Rosa's hand moved away from the mouse and came to rest in her lap. Your car's driving. It still drives. So what needed repairs? Elena felt heat rise under her skin. Mom, no, tell me, I'm asking. She was not angry. Her voice stayed quiet, almost gentle. That was what made Elena want to cry. If Rosa had shouted, Elena could have pushed back. Shouting gave people shape. This calm only made the lie feel thin and stupid and obvious in her own mouth. It was making a noise, Elena said. I just handled it. And you didn't tell me. I didn't want to stress you out. With my own money. The sentence came without force, but it landed harder than if Rosa had thrown something. Elena looked away from her mother's face and toward the window, where one of Rosa's potted plants sat on the sill, leaves curling a little in the heat. I was going to put it back, she said. When? Soon. How soon? 3 days. Rosa was quiet long enough that Elena had to look back at her. Her mother's face had changed very little. That was the worst part. No dramatic heartbreak, no movie mother outrage. Only fatigue and a kind of inward flinch, as if the hurt had gone somewhere private first. You already took it, Rosa said. You already decided I didn't need to know. Elena opened her mouth and closed it again. From the muted television, captions kept moving across the bottom of the screen while nobody listened. Rosa turned back to the laptop. For a second, Elena thought that was all. That Rosa was done. That somehow the lie had passed because nothing better had been offered. Then Rosa said, still looking at the screen, I thought maybe I was getting confused. What? With the number. Rosa tapped once at the table with one finger. I counted it wrong in my head last night. This morning, too. I thought maybe I was tired, but no. I said I'll put it back. I know what you said. Again, that quiet. Again, the almost unbearable softness. Elena stood there, wanting to confess and wanting not to exist. Those two urges arriving so close together, they felt like one thing. She could still do it. Not all of it, maybe. Not Jean-Luc, not Paris, not the pictures, not the voice notes at 2 in the morning, but some peace. Enough to make the look on Rosa's face less like this. Instead, she said, I'm sorry. Rosa nodded once, but it was not acceptance. More like she was placing the apology on a shelf where it would have to wait for proof. We'll pay the hospital, Rosa said. Today or tomorrow. Don't move anything else. I won't. Rosa closed the laptop halfway, not all the way. Okay, that was it. No raised voice. No accusation beyond the ones already spoken. Rosa picked up her glasses, adjusted them, and looked back toward the surgery paperwork as if maybe the forms would now explain the daughter sitting in front of her. Elena stayed where she was a second too long. Mom, Rosa did not look up. I said okay. Elena went back into the kitchen because there was nowhere else to go. She stood at the sink with both hands flat on the counter, staring at the dish rack. The spoon she had dropped earlier was still there, half dry. Sunlight had moved across the floor. Somewhere outside, a garbage truck groaned down the block. The lie had held, technically. Rosa knew money was gone, but not why. Elena had not been exposed, not fully. She still felt as if something had already broken. At work, the day moved past her without leaving much behind. A man in a sun's cap asked for another Modelo, and she nearly gave him a receipt instead. Rick had to repeat a question about Saturday scheduling twice before she answered. Megan kept glancing at her in that sideways, not pushing way she had, when concern had started to harden into annoyance. You good? Megan asked at one point while refilling the garnish tray. Yeah. You sure? Yeah. Megan dropped a scoop of cherries into the metal bin and looked at Elena's face for another second. You're somewhere else. Elena almost said, My mother knows I took the money, but not why. My uncle thinks I need a washing machine. And my sister's checking my lies against Instagram stories. Instead, she said, didn't sleep. Megan nodded, but the nod meant that's not the whole thing. The bar smelled of beer and fryer oil and citrus peel. Ice cracked into the sink. Glasses knocked softly together under the running water. It should have been normal enough to hide in, but Elena kept seeing Rosa at the laptop. The numbers on the screen, the small pause before with my own money. Around 4, Elena took her phone into the employee bathroom and stared at Sophia's name. She could call, she could say some version of the truth before it reached Sophia another way. She could control the story a little. But what story? That she had given money to a friend. That a man she had never met had told her he loved her and sent her photos of watches in airport lounges and a gift package worth nearly $500,000. That she, Elena, 29 years old, practical Elena, not soft Elena, not stupid Elena, had paid a $1,000 release fee because she wanted so badly to believe that somebody elegant and expensive had chosen her. She put the phone back in her apron and went out to wipe down table 12. By the time she got home, dusk had already started to drain the color from the street. Rosa was in her bedroom with the TV on low. Elena could hear it through the half-closed door. A Spanish soap now, voices rising and falling, too emotional for the volume they were being played at. The living room lamp was on. The sewing machine sat in shadow by the window. A mug with cold tea still in it rested on the side table beside the sofa. Elena set down her purse quietly, as if being gentle with objects might count as repair. Then somebody knocked at the front door. She froze, not because she knew it was Sophia, because she knew it could only be Sophia. The second knock came firmer. Elena opened the door. Sophia stood on the porch in hospital scrubs and sneakers, her hair pulled back too tight, backpack slung over one shoulder. There were faint half moons under her eyes. She looked tired enough to be kind by accident, but she wasn't. Not tonight. Mom said you were home, Sophia said. Elena stepped back without answering. Sophia came inside, took in the room with one quick glance, and lowered her voice. Is she awake? In her room. She okay? Elena gave a short laugh that wasn't really a laugh. You tell me. Sophia let the backpack slide off her shoulder onto the chair by the door. She called me. That landed exactly as hard as Elena knew it would. What did she say? She said she checked the savings account, and $1,000 was missing. Sophia's eyes stayed on Elena's face. She said you told her it was for car repairs. Elena crossed her arms because she suddenly needed something between her hands and the rest of the room. It's handled. That's not what I asked. There it was. The same Dr. Flat tone from the phone, only worse in person because Elena could see the restraint inside it. Sophia nodded toward the sofa. Sit down. I'm not 12. Then don't act like it. The sentence cut so cleanly, Elena almost admired it. Instead, she sat because standing there had become unbearable. Sophia remained standing for a second, then sat in the armchair across from her. knees apart, elbows on her thighs. The living room lamp cast a yellow light that made them both look more tired than they were. "Tell me what happened," Sophia said. "Nothing happened." Sophia looked toward Rose's closed bedroom door and then back at Elena. When she spoke again, her voice was even lower. Mom cried on the phone. Elena felt something in her face move before the tears actually came. She looked away. "She didn't scream," Sophia said. "She didn't even sound mad. She just—" Sophia stopped herself, pressed her lips together, started again. "She sounded embarrassed, like she was apologizing for not understanding you." Elena put one hand over her eyes. "I was going to put it back." "With what?" "I did put it back." Sophia went still. "What?" The room seemed to tighten around the sentence the moment it was spoken. Elena dropped her hand and stared at the carpet. There was no elegant path now. No lie broad enough to cover all the other lies without tearing open at the middle. Sophia watched her for a long second. "Where did you get the money?" she asked. Elena didn't answer. Sophia asked again, quieter this time. "Where did you get it?" Elena heard herself say, "I borrowed it." "From who?" Silence. "Elena. Carlos." Sophia sat back slowly. "You borrowed $1,000 from Tio Carlos." Elena nodded once. "And told Mom what exactly? That it was the car?" "Yes." Sophia looked at her as if she were trying not to say the first 6 things that came to mind. "Why did you need the money in the first place?" The tears came harder now, not dramatic, just infuriating. Elena wiped her face angrily. "Don't cry and not answer," Sophia said. "That did it." Elena laughed once through the tears, sharp and ugly. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Act like if you ask something in the right tone, people just become better." Sophia's face changed, but only slightly. Hurt, then control layered over it. "I'm asking because I'm here, and Mom is in there thinking her daughter stole from her." "I didn't steal. You took it without telling her." "I was going to put it back." "But you didn't have it." Elena stared at the floor. The fibers of the rug had flattened in one strip where Rose's shoes always crossed from the hallway to the sofa. Sophia's voice came quieter now, and somehow that was worse. "Who did you send it to?" Elena's head jerked up. Sophia held her gaze. "You sent it, right? That's why you were desperate. That's why you asked me for $1,000, then Megan, then Carlos." "Megan told you?" "I guessed Megan." Elena's mouth opened and shut. Sophia saw too much. Not everything, but enough. "It was a friend," Elena said finally. Sophia's expression did not change. "What friend?" "A person I knew." "What person?" "He needed help." Sophia just kept looking at her. That was the thing about Sophia. She had learned, somewhere between anatomy lab and family exhaustion, how to leave silence in place until other people filled it. "He said he'd pay it back," Elena said. "He—" Elena wiped under one eye with the heel of her hand. "Yes." "Who is he?" "A friend." Sophia leaned back in the chair and let out a breath through her nose. "Oh my God. It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" "He said he needed help with something, okay?" "What something?" Elena said nothing. Sophia waited one beat too long, then asked, "Did you ever meet him?" Elena looked away. Sophia's voice changed again, stripped down now, almost clinical in its calm. "Did you ever meet him?" "No." The word was barely audible. Sophia sat back fully this time. One hand went to her forehead, then dropped again. "Elena, I know." "No, I don't think you do." "He said he'd sent—" Elena stopped. "What?" The room held still. Elena looked at the dark TV screen, at their reflections caught faintly in it. "He said he'd sent something. A gift." Sophia blinked at her. "A gift." "He said it got held up and needed a fee." "A fee." Elena's face burned. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Repeat everything like I'm stupid." Sophia's jaw tightened. "I'm repeating it because I want to hear if it sounds better the second time." Elena cried harder then, not loudly, but enough that talking became difficult. She pressed both hands over her face and bent forward. For a moment, Sophia said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost some of its edge. "Not much, just enough to prove it had been chosen." "How much did you send?" "You know how much." "I want to hear you say it." Elena dropped her hands on 1,000. Sophia looked toward Rose's bedroom again and lowered her voice even more. "Did you report it?" "No." "Why not?" "Because the screenshots would exist. Because the voice notes would exist. Because somewhere in a police report, in cold official English, she would have to become the woman who sent surgery money to a man with a French name and expensive pictures." Elena shrugged instead. "Why not?" Sophia repeated. "Because I was embarrassed." This time Sophia did not challenge the wording. She just nodded once, like some part of the diagnosis now had a label. Then she asked, "What did you tell Tio Carlos?" Elena stared at her. Sophia's eyes narrowed. "What did you tell him?" Elena said nothing. "Car repairs?" No answer. "Hospital bill?" Still nothing. Sophia's face shifted in a way Elena had almost never seen. Something between disbelief and pity, both of which Elena hated equally. You lied to him too. Elena's silence confirmed it. Sophia sat back in the chair and looked up at the ceiling for a second, as if appealing to a god she wasn't sure she had time for. Jesus, I'm paying him back. With what? I'll figure it out. How? Elena had no answer. Carlos in 3 months, the surgery in days, bar shifts, cash tips, more lies probably. The whole future had started to feel like a room she would have to cross while balancing a bowl full to the brim. Sophia looked at her for a long time. When she spoke again, all the sharpness had gone out of her voice. That made it harder to hear. Why didn't you just tell me? Elena gave a small, cracked laugh. And say what? The truth. You don't want the truth. Sophia's face hardened again, but not all the way. Try me. Elena shook her head. She could not say, because he was handsome and rich-looking and made me feel less small. She could not say, because for 3 months I got to be somebody a man like that might choose. She could not say, because I knew how it would sound the second I said it out loud. Instead, she said, I thought I could fix it. Sophia nodded once, eyes on her. Yeah, I know. The sentence should have been kind. It wasn't. Or maybe it was, and that was the problem. From Rosa's room, the TV volume dropped even lower. Then silence. No footsteps. No door opening. Just the knowledge of Rosa in there. Awake, not sleeping, maybe listening harder than either of them wanted to believe. Sophia followed Elena's glance toward the hall. Does she know any of this? No, but she knows money was gone. That's all. Sophia rose from the chair and crossed once to the window, then back again. She folded her arms, thinking. When she stopped moving, she spoke without looking directly at Elena. I'm not telling her tonight. Elena lifted her head. Not tonight, Sophia repeated. Then she finally met her eyes. But you're telling her. A cold heaviness settled into Elena's stomach. Sophia. No, she doesn't need. She already needs it. She just doesn't know what it is. Elena wiped her face again. I paid it back. That's not the point. It is the point. No, the point is you took money from her surgery fund, lied to her, lied to me, lied to Tio Carlos, and somehow you still think the main problem is whether the account balance looks normal. Elena flinched. Sophia stepped closer, but her voice stayed low, controlled. I'm not doing this thing with you where everything becomes about your shame, and then everybody has to tiptoe around it. For a second, Elena thought Sophia might yell. Instead, she only said, You have until tomorrow. To do what? To tell Mom yourself. Elena stared at her. If you don't, Sophia said, I will. There was no drama in it. No threat performed for effect. That was what made it final. Elena whispered, You'd do that? Sophia's face did not change. Yes. They looked at each other across the dim room, both of them breathing quietly, so Rosa would not hear anything beyond the fact of voices. Then Sophia picked up her backpack from the chair. At the door, she stopped, one hand already on the knob. Elena said nothing. Sophia's next words came softer than the rest, but not softer enough to count as mercy. I know you think you're protecting Mom from this. You're not. She opened the door and left. The room stayed the same after she was gone. Same lamp, same sofa, same folded blanket over the armrest, same smell of old upholstery and whatever Rosa had heated for dinner hours ago. But the air in it had changed. Or maybe Elena had. She sat down slowly on the sofa and pulled a pillow into her lap without meaning to, as if her hands had decided on their own that they needed something to hold. In the bedroom down the hall, the television came back on. Not louder, if anything, quieter than before. The muffled voices in Spanish moved in and out beneath the rattle of the AC. Rosa was awake. Rosa had to be awake. Maybe she had heard enough to know this was no car repair. Maybe not. Either possibility felt unbearable. Elena sat with the pillow against her stomach and looked toward the hallway. She knew what Sophia had just done. Not exposed her, not yet. Worse than that. Sophia had given her the last piece of control and turned it into a deadline. The house seemed to be waiting. Elena did not move. In Rosa's room, the television went even lower until it was almost only murmur. Elena could feel the silence around that sound like pressure. Her mother was still awake. Her mother was waiting. But Elena stayed on the sofa with the pillow in her arms and the lamp burning beside her, staring at the dark hall as if it belonged to someone braver. The truth. When Elena came into the kitchen the next morning, Rosa already had coffee poured. The smell hit first. Dark, burnt a little, the way her mother always made it. Then the sight of the table. 2 mugs, a plate with toast she had not touched, the surgery packet pushed to one side. Folded reading glasses resting on top of it. Morning light came through the thin curtains over the sink and laid a pale rectangle across the linoleum. The house was quiet in the particular way it got after a bad night, as if even the refrigerator knew better than to be loud. Rosa sat at the table in her robe, one leg stretched out, the brace visible beneath the hem. She looked tired, but more settled than she had the night before. That scared Elena more than anger would have. "Eat something," Rosa said. Elena stood in the doorway with one hand still on the frame. "I'm not hungry." "Sit down anyway." Her voice was calm, not soft exactly, just finished with waiting. Elena pulled out the chair across from her and sat. The coffee in front of her had already gone from steaming to merely hot. She wrapped both hands around the mug without drinking. For a few seconds, neither of them said anything. Outside, a truck went past too fast on the street. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked, then stopped. Rosa looked at the table, not at Elena. "You're going to tell me now," she said. It was not a question. Elena looked toward the hall on instinct, half expecting Sophia to be there already, listening. But the hall was empty. The bedroom doors were open. The television was off. The whole house seemed to have cleared a space for this. Rosa lifted her eyes. "Tell me the truth." Elena's mouth was dry. She had thought about this conversation half the night, and none of the versions had survived morning. Every sentence she had rehearsed now sounded fake, too clean, too defensive, too much like trying to save herself before she had even admitted what she'd done. "It wasn't the car," she said. Rosa nodded once, as if that part had long ago been decided. "I know." Elena stared into the coffee. The dark surface trembled slightly in her hands. "It was somebody," she said. "A man." Rosa said nothing. "I met him online." Still nothing. Elena forced herself to keep going before she lost the nerve. "Not met, not really. We talked for a while." "How long?" 3 months. The number seemed to settle in the room, heavy and stupid. Rosa leaned back a little in her chair. 3 months. Elena nodded. "He said he was from France." She let out one short breath that might have become a laugh if anything about this had been funny. "He had all these pictures, hotels, airports, expensive clothes, watches, cars. She stopped and wiped her palm once on her jeans under the table. "He looked like somebody who had his life together." Rosa's face changed only a little. Not surprise. More like a tired rearranging of old information. "And you believed him." It was not said cruelly. That made Elena's eyes sting. "Yes." Rosa looked down at her own hands. The knuckles were swollen now, the veins more visible than they used to be. Hands that had hemmed dresses, altered uniforms, fixed torn seams for cash in envelopes and $20 bills folded into thank yous. "What did he want?" Elena swallowed. "He said he didn't want anything at first." Rosa waited. "He said..." Elena's voice thinned out. She hated how childish the story sounded once it had to pass through the air. "He said he loved me. He said he wanted to prove he was serious. He said he sent a gift in my name." Rosa lifted her head slowly. "A gift?" Elena nodded. "He said it got held up at the airport because of customs, because it was worth too much." She had to stop there for a second. Not because the sentence was difficult to say, but because she could already hear how impossible it sounded to anyone outside the spell of it. Rosa kept looking at her. "What gift?" "He said jewelry, cash, things for me." Elena wiped under one eye with the heel of her hand. "He said all I had to do was pay a release fee." The kitchen felt smaller now. The coffee smelled thicker. The toast on the plate between them had gone dry at the edges. "How much?" Rosa asked. "You know how much?" "No," Rosa's voice stayed level. "I want you to say it." Elena looked at her mother then, and something in Rosa's face made resistance feel almost obscene. Not fury, not contempt. Just the steady, painful demand to stop making everyone else carry the weight of what Elena herself could not bear to name. $1,000. Rosa closed her eyes, only for a second. Then she opened them again. "And you sent it?" "Yes, with the surgery money." "Yes." The tears came properly then. Elena pressed her lips together, but that only made them worse. She put one hand over her face and bent forward. Rosa did not interrupt. She did not tell her not to cry. She let the silence stay long enough that Elena had to hear herself in it. "I was going to put it back," Elena said into her hand. "I thought he was real. I thought..." Her voice broke there. "I thought I could fix it before you knew." Rosa looked away toward the sink. The morning light had moved a little farther up the cabinet doors. Her expression was not hard. That would have been simpler. It was wounded in a quieter place. "When did he disappear?" "Right after I sent it. And then I tried calling him, messaging, everything was gone." Rosa was silent again. Elena wiped her face and kept going because once she stopped, she might not start again. "I panicked. I asked Sophia for money. I asked Megan. Then I went to Carlos." Rosa's head turned back sharply at that. "You went to my brother." Elena nodded. What did you tell him? The shame of this part felt almost cleaner because at least it was shame she recognized. Old family shame, ordinary shame. Not the newer, stranger humiliation of being dazzled by a man she had never touched. I lied. Rosa let out a breath through her nose. It wasn't quite a laugh, but it had the same shape as disbelief. About what? A washing machine. For the first time that morning, Rosa's face flickered with something like astonishment. A washing machine? I know. You told Carlos you needed $1,000 for a washing machine. Elena nodded again, crying harder now because the lie sounded even dumber in this light in this kitchen, with her mother in her robe and the hospital forms on the table. I didn't know what else to say. Rosa looked at the ceiling for a moment, then back at Elena. Her eyes were wet now too, though she had not yet cried. Elena, the way she said her name was what undid her. Not angry, not disappointed in the broad parental sense. Smaller than that, more intimate. As if she had been wounded somewhere inside the fact of knowing her daughter. I'm sorry, Elena said. I know. Rosa shook her head once. No, listen to me. Elena lowered her hand from her face. Rosa's voice stayed quiet. Money is money. We can talk about money. We can fix money or not fix money. That is one thing. Her mouth trembled once and steadied. But you sat here, in this house, with all of this, and you let me look at you and not know. Elena cried without answering. Rosa's own tears came then, sudden and unhidden. She did not sob. They just spilled over one after another, and she wiped them away impatiently, almost angrily as if they annoyed her. What did I do wrong, she asked, that you could not tell me? The question landed harder than anything else had. Elena stared at her. Mom, no, tell me. Rosa's voice shook now. What did I do that made you think you had to hide this until it got so ugly? You didn't do anything? Then why? Because you always looked at Sophia when the word practical came up. Because when Elena was 16 and got her heart broken by a boy with a car and stupid perfect teeth, Rosa had said, you still believe what people hand you just because they smile while they do it. Because Jean-Luc had made her feel not only wanted, but upgraded. And the second she admitted that, she would have to see how hungry she still was for something she should have outgrown. But none of that would come out cleanly. None of it would sound like truth instead of excuse. So Elena said the smallest true thing she could. I was ashamed. Rosa looked at her for a long second. Of what? That I believed him. Elena's voice dropped. That I was stupid enough to believe somebody like that would... She stopped. Would what? Elena looked down at the table. One crumb of toast near Rosa's plate. A stain in the wood grain. Her own fingers knotted together so tightly the knuckles had gone pale. Would love me, she said. After that, neither of them spoke for a while. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard shifted. Elena turned and saw Sophia in the doorway to the hall, not surprised to find her there. Of course she was there. She had probably been awake already, waiting out the end of the last possible delay. She came in quietly and sat at the far end of the table without asking. Her hair was pulled back, her face scrubbed plain, dark circles under her eyes. She looked younger in the morning and harder at the same time. Rosa did not tell her to leave. Sophia folded her hands on the table and kept her eyes on Elena. The three of them sat there in the thin daylight, the coffee cooling, the toast untouched. Rosa spoke first. Do you think, she asked, and now her voice was very soft, that I would stop loving you because of this? Elena looked up at her mother. No. Then why do you keep acting like love is the first thing that leaves the room? The tears came again so fast Elena had to cover her mouth. Sophia looked away then, out of mercy or discomfort, Elena could not tell. Rosa reached across the table. It took Elena a second to understand what she was doing. Then she put her hand into her mother's, and Rosa held it tightly, almost roughly, as if tenderness alone was not enough. You can be foolish, Rosa said. You can be lonely. You can embarrass yourself. You can make a mess. You are still my daughter. Her fingers tightened. But you do not lie to me. Elena nodded, crying openly now. I know. No, Rosa said. Now you know. That, more than anything, felt like the point of no return. Not because it was dramatic, because it was plain. Sophia shifted in her chair. What do we still owe? She asked. Rosa wiped under one eye with her free hand and let go of Elena slowly. 500, she said. Elena turned to her. I can work more. Sophia gave her a look that was not unkind, only exhausted. Work where? Rick already told you he's cutting shifts. Elena stared at her. How do you know that? Megan texted me last night. Of course she had. Of course this had spread outward through the normal quiet pathways of concern and irritation and loyalty. Elena looked back down. I can pay Carlos back in 3 months, she said. I'll figure that part out. Rosa leaned back in her chair. Carlos? She closed her eyes briefly again. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I know you're sorry. That doesn't help, Sophia said, not sharply, just as fact. Rosa looked at her younger daughter, then back at Elena. How much did Carlos give you? 1,000. And you put it back into the account? Yes. Rosa nodded slowly, piecing the shape of it together. So the account is whole now, except for the part that was already missing. Elena frowned faintly. What do you mean? Rosa looked at the hospital papers. The estimate changed, she said. Insurance didn't cover one part we thought it would. It's not just your 1,000, it's another 500. For a second, Elena could not follow the math, only the feeling of the floor shifting again beneath a floor that had already failed. Sophia sat up straighter. Mom. Rosa reached for her coffee and found it had gone cold. She set it back down without drinking. I have some money for my scholarship refund, Sophia said. About 500, maybe a little more. Rosa shook her head immediately. No. It's okay. No. It's not okay, Sophia said, suddenly sharper. But it's there. Rosa's expression closed. That money is for school. I know what it's for, and I'm not taking it. It's not taking, it's helping. Rosa looked from one daughter to the other, then back to the table. I'm not using your school money to clean up this. The sentence hung there. Not cruel, not wrong, just impossible to look at directly. Elena swallowed. I'll pay it, and she said, I said I would. With what? Sophia asked again. But this time there was less accusation in it than fear. Elena had no answer that sounded like more than panic in work shoes. Rosa sat silently for a moment, then rubbed one hand over her knee where the brace sat under the robe. I'll ask Father Miguel, she said. Elena's head lifted. Rosa didn't look at her. The church has emergency funds, small ones, sometimes for rent, medicine, things like that. The old reflex rose at once in Elena. I don't want people knowing. The words were out before she could stop them. Rosa turned her head slowly. There was no anger in her face, only the exhausted clarity of someone who had reached the end of politeness with another person's pride. You don't want people knowing, she repeated. You didn't want me knowing. You didn't want Sophia knowing. You didn't want Carlos knowing. She paused. How's that working? Elena looked down. Sophia said nothing, but the silence beside her felt like agreement. After a while, Elena nodded once. Okay, she said. The word felt strange in her mouth, as if it belonged to someone less tired. Rosa pushed back her chair with effort and stood, one hand braced on the table. Sophia rose immediately to help, but Rosa waved her off at first, then accepted her arm anyway. The movement seemed older than Elena had let herself notice before. Careful, measured. Pain negotiated, not avoided. Call Carlos, Rosa said. Elena looked up sharply. Now? Yes, I already told him I'd pay him back. Rosa gave her a look. Call him. Elena reached for her phone with fingers that no longer felt entirely under her control. She found Carlos's number and hit call. The ring sounded too loud in the quiet kitchen. He answered on the third ring. Yeah? Elena opened her mouth, but Rosa held out her hand. Give it to me. Elena passed her the phone. Rosa put it to her ear. Her voice changed slightly when she spoke to her brother. Not a different language now, just the older family register inside English, flatter and more intimate. Carlos, it's Rosa. A pause. Yes, I know. She looked at Elena once, briefly. She told me. Sophia stood near the sink now, arms folded, watching neither of them directly. Rosa listened. No, she said. I'm not calling to fight with you. Another pause. I'm calling because she lied to you and because that is my fault too, a little. Carlos must have said something to that, because Rosa's mouth tightened and softened at once. I know you were trying to help. She looked down at the table. I'm sorry. Elena heard only Carlos's voice as a low murmur through the phone speaker, nothing distinct. Rosa went on. No, I'm not angry. Embarrassed, yes. Tired, yes. Not angry at you. A longer pause. Next time, call me anyway. At that, the corner of Rosa's mouth twitched in a way that wasn't quite a smile. I know, she said. I know she would have hated it. Another murmur from the phone. Rosa's eyes flicked to Elena again. She'll pay you back. Carlos said something longer then, and though Elena still couldn't make out the words, she heard the shape of them. Steady, not sentimental, the way he had spoken at his kitchen table. Rosa listened, then said quietly, all right. She ended the call and set the phone down. No one moved for a moment. What did he say? Sophia asked. Rosa lowered herself carefully back into the chair. He said he isn't angry. She looked at Elena. But next time, he said not to let my daughter lie to him. Elena dropped her eyes at once. The kitchen had gone bright in a different way now. Fully morning. No more excuse of half-light. On the counter, the coffee pot sat empty except for one burnt inch at the bottom. The surgery forms were still there. Nothing had been solved. Not exactly. There was still money missing. Still a debt to Carlos. Still a church fund Elena would have to let touch the private mess she had tried so hard to contain. But the secret itself was gone. That made the room feel rawer, not cleaner. Rosa rose again, slower this time. "I'm making lunch," she said. "It's barely 10:30, Sophia said. "So then it will be early lunch." She moved toward the stove with the stubborn dignity Elena had grown up under, and Sophia went after her automatically, taking a pan from the cabinet before Rosa had to reach for it. "Sit," Rosa told her. "I'm just helping. I can still cut an onion." "I know." Their voices from the kitchen stayed low, ordinary, moving around each other in the old familiar rhythm of practical people solving the next thing because the next thing was there. Elena remained at the table. She could hear drawers opening, the faucet running, the soft knock of a cutting board being set down. The conversation between her mother and sister was not whispered. It was worse than whispering. It was normal. About oil. About whether there were still tomatoes in the fridge. About Father Miguel's office hours. As if this morning had not split something. But Elena knew it had. She sat alone at the kitchen table with her cold coffee in front of her and the hospital papers off to one side, listening to the two of them in the kitchen. The sounds were domestic, almost gentle. Pan on burner. Cabinet door. Sophia asking where the knives had gone. Rosa telling her to look in the wrong drawer and then correcting herself. No one was yelling anymore. No one was hiding anymore either. That should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like the moment after a house settles on a cracked foundation. Everything still standing, everything altered. Elena lowered her eyes to her hands. In the kitchen behind her, her mother and sister kept talking in ordinary voices. And that ordinary sound was what finally made it clear that nothing in the house would ever be quite the same again. The church and what remained. "You're coming with me." Rosa said it from the hallway while Elena was still pulling on her work jeans. One leg half in, one leg out. The bedroom door was open. Morning light came through the thin blinds in pale stripes and fell across the dresser, the laundry basket, the framed print of desert flowers Elena had never liked enough to take down. Elena straightened. "Where?" "To church." Elena gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "Right now?" Rosa shifted her weight against the wall, one hand braced there, the other holding her purse strap. She already had her shoes on. The brace under her skirt made one side of her body look heavier than the other. "Yes, right now." Elena sat down on the edge of the bed to pull on her second shoe. "Mom, I have work later." "You don't work till noon." Elena looked up. "You checked?" "I know your schedule better than you do." That was probably true. Elena tied the laces too tightly, then loosened them again. "I don't want to go." Rosa's face didn't change. "I know. I mean it." "I know that too." Elena stood. "Mom." Rosa waited. The house was quiet except for the hum of the ache and the distant clink of a mug from the kitchen, where Sophia was probably rinsing out her coffee before leaving for campus. Ever since the confession, the mornings had become carefully practical. More polite, not less loving. That was what made them harder. "I don't want people knowing," Elena said. Rosa looked at her for a second, then adjusted the strap on her shoulder. "You already said that." Elena felt heat creep up her neck. "Yeah, and I still don't." Rosa nodded once toward the front of the house. "Come on." There was no point in pretending this was still a debate. Elena grabbed her purse from the chair and followed her out. Sophia was in the kitchen by the sink, travel mug in one hand, backpack on the chair. She glanced up when Elena came in, then at Rosa, and seemed to understand immediately where they were going. "You want me to come?" Sophia asked. Rosa shook her head. "Go to class." Sophia's eyes moved to Elena's face. They weren't warm, exactly, but they weren't hard the way they had been 2 nights ago either. "You okay?" Sophia asked. Elena almost said no. The word rose all the way to her mouth and then stalled there. She was not used to being asked that question without feeling tested by it. "I'm fine," she said, and Sophia did not challenge it. "Text me later," Sophia said. Elena nodded. "Okay." Outside, the morning was already warming up. The air had that dry, bright quality Phoenix got before noon, like the day was still pretending it might be gentle. Rosa moved carefully toward the Civic, one hand on the roof for balance, before she eased herself into the passenger seat. Elena went around to the driver's side and slid in. Neither of them spoke for the first few blocks. The neighborhood passed in the usual sequence: gravel yards, chain link fences, faded toys tipped on their sides, a tire shop with a hand-painted sign, a woman in scrubs locking her apartment door, while a child chased a plastic ball across the walkway. Elena drove with both hands on the wheel and kept her eyes forward. The church sat only 15 minutes away, but Elena had not been inside in months, maybe longer. She came on Christmas because Rosa would have been hurt if she didn't, Easter if Sophia was home, and made it feel less like a test. Otherwise, she sent money in the collection basket when it reached her and let that stand in for the rest. Our Lady of Guadalupe was a low beige building with a red tile roof and a courtyard lined with drought-tough shrubs and cracked terracotta pots. The morning sun flashed white off the little metal cross above the entrance. A row of statues stood along the side garden. Mary in blue and white, Joseph looking tired, one St. Helena never knew by name. The parking lot was half full with the cars of retirees, office workers, stopping in before work, women who had errands and still made time for a candle. Elena parked under a stunted tree that gave more pattern than shade. "We can still leave," she said. Rosa was already unbuckling. "No!" Inside, the church smelled the way it always had. Candle wax, old wood, floor polish, and a faint trace of incense sunk into the walls from years of use. The sanctuary doors were open, but Rosa led her not there. Instead, down a side hallway toward the parish office. Elena's stomach tightened more with every step. A secretary looked up from behind a desk and smiled at Rosa with the particular warmth churches reserve for women who volunteered too much and never called it volunteering. "Good morning, Rosa." "Good morning." The woman's eyes flicked briefly to Elena, then away in a tactful little movement Elena hated instantly because it suggested she had already been discussed, or might be. "Father Miguel has a few minutes," the secretary said. "You can go in." Father Miguel's office was smaller than Elena remembered. A desk, two mismatched chairs, a bookshelf with binders and worn theology paperbacks, a framed print of the Virgin on one wall, and a parish fundraiser flyer taped crookedly to another. Light from the window behind him made the room feel both exposed and forgiving. He stood when they entered. He was in his 50s maybe, with close-cropped dark hair graying at the sides, wire-rimmed glasses, and the tired but alert face of someone who heard a lot more than people probably intended to tell him. He wore a plain black clerical shirt with the collar tab, sleeves rolled once at the forearms. "Rosa," he said, coming around the desk to take her hand in both of his. "How are you?" "Walking slower than before," Rosa said. He smiled. "That usually means you're walking carefully, which is sometimes better." Then he looked at Elena. Elena. She had no memory of the last time he'd said her name directly. Maybe her father's memorial mass years ago. Maybe Christmas in the receiving line. He had the kind of face that made you feel you should answer honestly, and the kind of job that meant nobody ever did, at least not at first. "Hi," she said. Father Miguel gestured to the chairs. "Sit down." Rosa sat first with a small wince she tried to hide. Elena sat beside her, hands folded too tightly in her lap. For a moment, Father Miguel only looked at them both, not waiting in a dramatic way, just making space. Rosa spoke first. "We need help." The priest nodded once, and all right. Rosa glanced at Elena, then back at him. "It's for the surgery. We thought we had the money. Then we didn't." Father Miguel did not look surprised. People probably arrived here every week with some version of that sentence. He leaned back slightly in his chair and, "Tell me what you can." Rosa did. Not with flourish, not even in the most charitable version. She said Elena had taken money from the surgery fund without telling her. She said it had been sent to someone who lied. She said the money itself had partly been replaced, but there was still a shortfall. She did not say Jean-Luc's name at first. She did not describe the photographs, the voice messages, the airport lie, the claimed gift. She said only what was needed to make the request real. Elena sat there and listened to her own shame being translated into something practical enough to discuss. When Rosa finished, Father Miguel was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to Elena. "Do you want to add anything?" Her whole body wanted to refuse. She shook her head without looking at him. "That's okay," he said. The kindness of that made her eyes sting. He did not press. He took off his glasses, wiped one lens absently on the hem of his shirt, and put them back on. "We have a St. Vincent de Paul emergency fund," he said. "It's not large and it's not for everything, but this is exactly the kind of thing it exists for." Elena kept her eyes on the floor. Rosa asked, "Would it cover 500? "It can," Father Miguel said. The room seemed to tilt very slightly around Elena, not from surprise, but from the fact of the number landing so cleanly. 500. Enough. Just enough. Father Miguel opened a drawer in his desk and took out a folder, then a form. He asked a few questions, not humiliating ones, just factual. Surgery date, hospital, amount due. Elena answered only when directly asked, and kept her voice as even as she could. When the form was done, Father Miguel signed it and stood. "I'll have Maria cut the check today," he said. "You can take it with you." Rosa exhaled slowly through her nose, the closest she would come to openly showing relief in front of another person. "Thank you," she said. Father Miguel shook his head. "That's what it's for." He looked at Elena again, but more gently now, as though they had both already accepted there would be no graceful way through this part. "You know," he said, "most people who come in here think the worst thing is needing help." Elena said nothing. Usually the worst thing is how long they waited before asking. She lifted her eyes finally. He did not look disappointed. That was what unsettled her most. There was no sermon in his face, no hidden, "you should have known better," just attention. "I know you're ashamed," he said. Elena's fingers tightened together in her lap. "But you still came," he went on. "That matters." Rosa looked at her then, not triumphantly, just as if she wanted Elena to hear it from someone else for once. Father Miguel folded his hands loosely in front of him. "I'm not going to ask why you believe this man. It's done. You know what he is now." He paused. "What I care about is what you do next." Elena swallowed. "I don't know." "That's normal." She gave a tiny, humorless laugh. "Is it?" "Yes." He smiled slightly. "The clean lessons come later, if they come at all. Mostly what people get first is paperwork, embarrassment, and a few phone calls they didn't want to make." That surprised a real breath of laughter out of Rosa, and even Elena felt something in her chest loosen, though only for a second. Father Miguel's voice softened again. "You don't have to say anything today if you don't want to, but I will ask you one thing." He waited until she looked at him. "What did this teach you about who you can come to before things get this far?" Elena looked away almost immediately. The answer that came to mind first was ugly in its simplicity. Not men with beautiful watches and patient voices. But that wasn't really the question. She thought of Rosa at the kitchen table, Sophia in the living room doorway, Carlos standing on his porch saying, "Don't get clever," Megan polishing glasses and calling her out in the only language their friendship really trusted. Her throat tightened. "That I should have said something sooner," she said. Father Miguel nodded. Probably. He did not push it into a bigger speech than that. He just stood, moved to open the office door, and said he'd be back in a minute. While they waited, Elena sat with her hands between her knees and listened to the office noises beyond the door. Maria's voice. A printer warming up. Someone asking where to leave flowers for a funeral. Ordinary parish life going on around the worst week of Elena's life, which felt insulting and consoling at once. Rosa touched her arm lightly. Elena turned. Rosa said quietly, "See?" Elena gave a small, tired shrug. "I know." Rosa looked toward the hall where Father Miguel had gone. "Not everyone is like that, man." The sentence might have sounded like a lesson from anyone else. From Rosa, it sounded older than that. Not moral, earned. Elena nodded. A few minutes later, they left with a church check in a plain white envelope. Elena held it all the way to the car and did not look at it once. The paper seemed hot in her hand despite the air conditioning. On the drive home, Rosa was quiet for most of the way. Then, at a red light near a discount furniture store, she said, "We stopped by the bank first." Elena nodded. At the branch, she carried the envelope inside while Rosa waited in the car. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. A teller in a navy cardigan smiled and asked how she was doing, and Elena heard herself say, "Good, thanks," with enough automatic ease to almost hate herself. When she deposited the check into the savings account, the teller stamped the receipt and slid it back to her under the glass. "That should do it," the woman said. It was such a simple sentence that Elena nearly cried right there at the counter. Outside, she sat behind the wheel for a second before starting the car and checked the app again. The number was finally what it needed to be. Enough for the surgery. Enough to stop the immediate damage. Enough, at least, for now. Back at home, Rosa lowered herself slowly into her chair at the kitchen table while Elena set the deposit receipt beside the hospital paperwork. "Elena," Rosa said. She turned. Rosa looked at the receipt, then at her. "You see, it's done." The relief in Elena was so tangled up with humiliation that she did not know what to call the expression on her own face. "I'm sorry," she said. Rosa studied her a moment, and then reached out one hand. Elena came closer. Rosa pulled her down awkwardly into a brief embrace from the chair, one-armed because of the angle, more practical than sentimental. It was enough. "I know," Rosa said into her shoulder. "I'm not angry because you lost money." Elena closed her eyes. "I'm angry because you tried to carry it alone and lied to me while you were falling." Elena nodded against her. When Rosa let go, she did not make Elena look at her. That was another mercy. Sophia came home in the early evening, still wearing scrubs under a hoodie, her hair flattened at the back from whatever nap she had taken in a study room or car or library chair. She dropped her bag by the table and looked from Rosa to Elena to the receipt lying there. "Well?" she asked. Rosa said, "Father Miguel helped." Sophia exhaled, shoulders dropping visibly. "Okay." She picked up the receipt, scanned it, and set it down again. Then she looked at Elena, not sharply this time. "So the surgery's covered?" Rosa nodded. "For this part, yes." Sophia leaned back against the counter. "Good." No one said anything for a moment. Then Elena heard herself say, "I worked it out with Carlos, too. I'm going to pay him $200 a month, 5 months. Sophia's eyes moved to her face. "Can you?" "I'll make it work." "How?" "More night shifts, if Rick lets me. Maybe cover weekends at Megan's cousin's place if they need somebody. Sophia seemed about to say something skeptical, then stopped herself. Okay, it was a small word, but it was not dismissive. More like she had decided, at least for this one moment, to let Elena own the plan without tearing it open first. Later, after dinner, when Rosa was in the bedroom watching television and the house had slipped into that softer nighttime quiet, Elena sat on her bed with a notepad and a calculator app open on her phone. $200 a month to Carlos, gas, groceries, the minimum payment on her credit card. If Rick gave her one extra Friday and she stopped buying lunch at work and maybe sold the gold hoops she still had left. The numbers did not look good, but they looked possible in the miserable way some futures did. Possible enough to begin. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. I still love you. Just next time, don't do something this dumb alone. Elena stared at the message. The phrasing was pure Sophia. No false softness, no eloquent healing. Love wrapped in irritation so it wouldn't have to stand there naked. Elena typed 3 different replies and erased all of them. Finally, she sent, thank you. A second later, Sophia replied with a thumbs up and nothing else. Elena set the phone down. For a while, she just sat on the bed in the glow of her lamp, listening to the house. Rosa's TV in the other room, a pan cooling on the stove, a car door slamming outside. The ordinary sounds had come back, but they didn't feel ordinary yet. They felt borrowed. After a while, she picked up her phone again and opened the old email account she had used with Jean-Luc. The inbox was still there. She had not opened it since the morning in the bathroom, since the blank gray circle and the failed messages and the feeling of something inside her collapsing in an ugly, private way. She had been too busy putting out fires afterward. Megan, Carlos, Sophia, Rosa, the hospital, the church, the money, always the money. Now the messages rose up one after another. His name, the photographs, the subject lines that had once made her stupidly, instantly happy. Thinking of you. I wish you were here. My beautiful Elena. She opened the first one she saw. A photo loaded slowly. Jean-Luc on a hotel balcony somewhere, washed in evening light. White shirt sleeves rolled, city skyline behind him. He looked exactly the way he had been designed to look. Expensive, tired, gentle. Available only to someone lucky enough to be chosen. Below it his words. I wish I could make coffee for you in the morning instead of writing from another country. Elena stared until the sentence turned from intimate to mechanical in front of her eyes. She deleted it. Then another, a shorter email, mostly flirtation, ending with, you don't know what you do to me. Delete. Another with a picture of a watch on his wrist over the steering wheel of some car that probably wasn't his. Delete. She kept going. Some were easier than others. The more obviously false ones went first. The ones full of exaggerated promises, the ones that now sounded like a movie made cheaply for people too lonely to care about the lighting. The harder ones were the emails where he had borrowed her own life back to her. The one where he remembered her mother's surgery date. The one where he asked whether her shoulder still hurt after long shifts. The one where he told her to eat before bed because she got headaches when she didn't. Those were the ones that had done the real damage. Not because they were clever, because they had been attentive. Elena deleted those too. At the bottom of the inbox sat the last email she had ever read before everything broke. She opened it. No photograph this time, just text. My love, I sent it because I want you to know I'm serious. I love you. Trust me one more time, and this will be behind us soon. She read it once. Then again. It still hurt, but not in the same place. The humiliation had changed shape. Less like a wound being pressed, more like a bruise she had stopped checking every hour. She hovered over the delete icon. For a second, she wanted to keep this last one, not because she believed it anymore, but because it seemed impossible that something which had rearranged her life so quickly could vanish with a tap. She wanted evidence, a shard, a punishment. She wanted something to point to later and say, there. That was the exact sentence where I handed over more than money. But keeping it felt too much like leaving a chair at the table for him. So she deleted it. The inbox refreshed. Nothing from Jean-Luc remained. Elena sat there staring at the empty screen until it dimmed, her face coming back faintly in the black glass. Then she locked the phone, set it on the nightstand, and lay back on the bed without undressing, one arm over her eyes. In the next room, her mother laughed once at something on television, and the sound moved through the wall, thin and ordinary and real. This time, Elena did not reach for the phone again. The envelope in the hand. 3 months later, Elena sat in the half-dark hospital room and watched her mother sleep. The knee surgery had gone well. That was what the surgeon had said in the hallway, pulling down his mask, already moving on to the next room before the relief in Elena's body had fully found a place to land. Rose had been brought back an hour ago, pale and heavy with anesthesia, her mouth slightly open, one hand resting on the blanket, as if she had meant to move it and forgotten. The room smelled like disinfectant, wilted flowers, and that faint plastic cold scent hospitals always carried no matter the season. A monitor glowed green by the bed. Somewhere beyond the door, a cart rolled past with a rattle of metal and one brief burst of laughter from a nurse before the hallway went quiet again. Elena sat in the vinyl chair by the window with her purse in her lap and her jacket folded over the back. She had come straight from work. Her feet hurt. Her shoulders hurt. Her eyes felt dry in that particular way that came after a long day of smiling at people for tips and then driving fast across town because her mother had gone into recovery and Elena needed, suddenly and absolutely, to be here. Rosa looked older asleep. Not weaker. Not exactly. Just stripped of the things that usually held her together. The alertness, the small corrections, the domestic authority that lived even in her silences. Her gray hair had flattened against the pillow on one side. The lines around her mouth looked deeper under the hospital light. Her hands lay quiet on the blanket, both of them visible now. Elena looked at those hands for a long time. The fingers were swollen a little from arthritis, the knuckles broader than they used to be. The nails were short and unpainted. On the side of Rose's right index finger, there was still a pale old scar from a sewing needle that had gone in too deep years ago while finishing a prom dress for somebody else's daughter. Elena remembered the blood on the fabric, the way Rosa had cursed softly under her breath and kept going after wrapping the finger in paper towel. Those hands had made hems and tamales and school lunches and altar cloths. They had fixed loose buttons in parking lots before weddings. They had held Elena's face steady when she was sick as a child. They had slapped the hood of the Civic once when Elena was 17 and lying badly about where she'd been. They had also, more recently, reached across a kitchen table and taken Elena's hand while saying, "You can be foolish, you do not lie to me." On the rolling tray by the bed sat a clear vase of white daisies from Sophia, a paper cup with a straw, and a brown envelope. Elena had placed the envelope there 10 minutes ago and not looked at it since. It was thick but not heavy looking. Ordinary office supply brown, flap sealed, her mother's name written across the front in the careful block letters Elena used when she was trying not to turn a note into something emotional. Inside was $1,000 in cash, saved a little at a time over the last 3 months. Night shifts, weekend doubles, tips tucked into a jar in the back of her closet. The sale of the last pair of the gold hoops she had left. A couple of days at Megan's cousin's bar on the west side when somebody didn't show. Not elegant money. Not movie redemption money. Small, tired money that had been gathered honestly. She had already been paying Carlos back, $200 a month as promised. She still owed him one more payment after this, but the envelope mattered differently. It wasn't about the surgery now. The surgery was already done. The check from the church, the insurance, Rosa's own savings, Sophia's relentless scheduling, all of that had carried them here. This was something else. Inside the envelope was a folded note. "Mom, I'm giving it back. I love you." She had written 3 longer versions first and thrown them all away. The monitor made another soft sound. Rosa shifted slightly, not waking. The blanket rustled over her hospital gown. Elena rose from the chair and stepped closer to the bed. Out the window behind her, Phoenix at night stretched in flat bands of light. Parking lots, street lamps, red brake lights at an intersection. The glow of a gas station sign. The city looked the same as always, wide awake, a little ugly, impossible to quiet all the way. But from up here, through thick hospital glass, it felt held at a distance. Elena touched the edge of the brown envelope with one finger as if making sure it was still there. 3 months. In 3 months, she had learned the layout of exhaustion in her own body. The ache behind the knees after a double. The sting of feet after carrying trays for 6 hours straight. The clean, stupid gratitude of a $20 tip. She had learned how long it took to drive from the bar to Carlos's house with cash in her purse and the taste of old shame already waiting in her mouth. She had learned that Carlos, after the first month, stopped saying, "You count that?" and only nodded when she handed him the envelope. She had learned that Sophia checked in less like a detective now, and more like somebody placing a hand on a wall to see whether it was still standing. She had also learned that after the drama drained off a thing, the real cost remained in smaller forms. Rosa asked more questions now. Not accusing ones, practical ones. What time are you off? Did you eat? Who's covering for you? And beneath them always that slight new watchfulness. Not all the time, but enough that Elena noticed. At first, it had hurt every time. Now it hurt only when she was tired. That was maybe the truest change of all. A soft knock sounded at the partly open door. Elena turned. Sophia stood in the hallway, one hand still on the frame, hospital visitor badge, clipped crookedly to her sweater. She had changed out of scrubs after class and looked younger in jeans, though the dark circles under her eyes had become a permanent feature this semester. Her gaze moved from Elena to Rosa to the envelope on the tray. "She asleep?" Sophia asked quietly. Elena nodded. Sophia stepped inside, but only one pace. The room wasn't large enough for much movement without making it feel crowded. "How's her pain?" "She was out when they brought her in." Sophia nodded. "That's probably better." She came a little farther in then, enough to set a paper bag on the windowsill. "I got you both coffee," she said. "Not hospital coffee." Elena looked at the bag, then at her sister. "Thanks." Sophia shrugged once, small and awkward. "Don't make it a thing." It was such a Sophia sentence that Elena nearly smiled. For a moment they stood there together in the low hospital light, both looking at their mother. The silence between them no longer had the sharpness it had 3 months ago. It still had edges, just not knives. Sophia noticed the envelope again. "That it?" "Yeah." "All of it?" Elena nodded. Sophia leaned one shoulder against the wall. "You didn't have to do it tonight." "I know, but you wanted to." Elena looked at the tray table instead of answering. Sophia was quiet a moment. Then she said, "Carlos told Mom you've been paying him on time." Elena turned. "He told you that?" "He told Mom. Mom told me and to me." Elena gave a tired breath of laughter. "Of course." Sophia's mouth twitched. "Of course." She folded her arms and looked at Rosa again. "She was nervous all morning." "I know." "She kept pretending she wasn't." "I know." At that, Sophia looked at Elena more directly. There was no old superiority in it tonight. No, "I told you so." Just the strange, flat tenderness that sometimes appeared only after people had exhausted the more convenient feelings. "She'll be okay," Sophia said. Elena nodded, but the gesture caught somewhere in her throat. "I know." Sophia pushed off the wall. "I'm gonna call Miguel back and tell him she's out." "Okay." At the door, she paused and glanced back in. Elena thought she might say something bigger then, something sisterly and clean and redeeming. Instead, she only dipped her chin toward the bed and said, "Try to drink the coffee before it gets disgusting." Then she left. The room fell quiet again except for the monitor, the air vent, the distant hospital life moving beyond the door. Elena sat back down. She thought of the first month after the confession, how every kindness had felt almost unbearable. Rosa packing her leftovers for work. Sophia texting her dumb memes at midnight after anatomy review. Megan slipping her an extra shift without making Elena ask twice. Carlos opening the door before she knocked and not mentioning washing machines ever again. Father Miguel passing her in the church courtyard one Sunday and only saying, "Good to see you, Elena," as if that were all the dignity she needed from him that morning. None of it had erased what happened. That was the part Elena understood now with a kind of steady sadness. Forgiveness wasn't a mop. It didn't take the stain and make the floor new. It only made the room livable again. Rosa moved on the bed, a small, restless shift of her shoulders. Her face tightened briefly, then softened. One hand slid an inch across the blanket, fingers opening and closing once. Elena stood at once. "Mom?" No answer. Rosa did not wake. But her hand moved again, this time not randomly. Searching. The way people reached in sleep toward familiar things. A blanket edge, a pillow, another body in the bed beside them. Elena leaned down and took her hand. Rosa's fingers closed around hers almost immediately. The grip was not strong, just definite. Elena stood there, bent slightly over the bed, her hand caught in her mother's half-conscious hold. The skin of Rosa's palm was dry and warm. The IV tape on the back of her hand crackled faintly when she moved. Her breathing stayed even. Elena did not sit back down. For a while, she just stood there and let herself be held. The brown envelope remained on the tray table beside the vase of white daisies. Its edges caught the yellow hospital light, plain and stubborn. A small thing, too late for innocence, not too late for presence. She thought briefly of the note inside. "Mom, I'm giving it back. I love you." Even now it felt inadequate. The money did not reverse anything. The note did not explain anything she had not already said badly, tearfully, too late at a kitchen table. It was only paper and cash. A gesture. A delayed answer to a wound that had never been purely financial in the first place. And yet it mattered to her that it was there. Not because it balanced a ledger, because it said, "I did not forget what this cost you. I did not move on first." Outside the window, Phoenix kept going. Siren far off. Headlights moving along the freeway. a helicopter passing so faintly it barely registered as sound. The city looked restless and alive and indifferent in the way cities always did. But in the room, time had slowed to the pace of one sleeping woman's breath. Elena eased herself back into the chair without pulling her hand away. Rosa's grip slackened for a second, and then tightened again as if even sedated. She could tell the difference between absence and adjustment. Elena sat very still. 3 months earlier, if someone had told her this was what the end of it would look like, she might have found it disappointing. No dramatic reunion, no perfect speech, no bright proof that she had become wiser in one clean leap. Just a hospital room, tired feet, a brown envelope, her mother sleeping through most of the moment that was supposed to mean something. But now she understood that this was exactly why it meant something. Nothing had been made beautiful for her. Not the scam, not the lies, not the aftermath. She had not earned her way back into some cleaner version of herself. Rosa would still worry. Sophia would still listen a little harder when Elena paused before answering a question. Carlos would still count her repayments with those truck driver hands and that unreadable face. Elena herself would still every now and then remember the photographs of Jean-Luc and feel heat crawl up the back of her neck so fast it seemed to erase years. That was the scar. The love remained anyway. Rosa's thumb moved once across the side of Elena's hand, not fully awake, not fully asleep either. A reflex maybe, or recognition. Elena looked down at their joined hands and did not try to decide which. She thought of all the versions of herself she had spent years trying to avoid being in her mother's eyes. Foolish, needy, romantic, easy to fool, too willing to believe in whatever glowed. And maybe some of those versions had always been there. Maybe growing up was not becoming proof against them. Maybe it was only admitting they belonged to you and showing up anyway. Rosa breathed in, then out. The flowers on the tray had started to open more fully at their centers. White petals, yellow eyes. The envelope beside them looked almost ceremonial from a distance, though up close it was only the kind sold in packs of 20 at office supply stores. In the hallway, Sophia appeared once more, just briefly, pausing at the door with her phone in one hand. She looked in, saw Elena still holding Rosa's hand, and gave the smallest nod. Not approval exactly, not forgiveness, just recognition. Then she moved on. Elena turned back to the window. The city lights blurred for a second before she realized her eyes had filled again. She blinked and the view sharpened. Parking structure, ambulance bay, a line of traffic at the intersection. The red glow of a sign she couldn't read from here. She did not wipe her face. She sat with her mother's hand in hers and the envelope on the tray and the white daisies in their thin glass vase. And for the first time in months, she did not feel any urge to explain herself to anyone. There was nothing left to say that would improve the truth. Rosa slept on, breathing evenly. The room stayed quiet except for the soft machinery and the distant city. Elena kept holding her hand. And there, in the yellow hospital light, with the brown envelope untouched beside the flowers and Phoenix still burning beyond the glass, the silence no longer felt like punishment. It felt like something she could stay inside.